Okay, we are live. Infinite Plane Saturnday 427 2024. Nothing ominous about the numbers of the day, but I haven't consulted my wide array of gematria calculators and alternate calendars. We are live today on Odyssey, Twitch, YouTube, Rumble, and D Live. I'm likely going to expand the number of channels we're on here very soon to try to get more callers in. Obviously, it's one of the main things we want to open up the platform to new voices, new opinions. Ryler05 says Saturn's rings will disappear by 2025. Yes. Does anybody else here think that Jupiter's rings are a Mandela effect? Yes, Ted Stryker, there was a derailment. I believe it's off I-40 Arizona, New Mexico border area. I've only seen pictures. In other words, I can't say for sure I know it to be true, but in all likelihood, it's either a real derailment or they have staged and faked one as part of some broader destabilization psyop campaign. I mean, the last one was very prophetic, if you think about it. If you look at the last one, there were many, but the one they highlighted in Palestine, Ohio, that was predicated and predicted in the movie White Noise, that one clearly was foreshadowing what's happening in the Middle East. All we're doing now is awaiting the toxic airborne event. Ryla05 says, I remember when I was a kid we were taught that Jupiter had faint rings and now it doesn't. No, it still does. They've never changed that, but it's just one of these things where it's kind of funny. People will assume that because they haven't experienced it or don't remember it, that it may not exist. And that's one of the problems that seems to baffle the Mandela effect. And I mentioned the other day, just to bring this up really quick, the Mandela effect has been categorically debunked. There aren't any. It can be explained by retroactive interference, by the interrogator bias, among other things, arguments from ad populum. But more importantly, even though we've debunked it, it turns out that Tim Pool doesn't have an E at the end. Pool, no E. To me, that's an effect, but there's no such thing. So we're just going to rebrand the whole thing. It's the Tim Pool effect. It's the first one, it's the only recognized one in our canon of accepted effects. So anyway, if you want to add to the pool of Tim Pool effects, feel free. They're just no longer called Mandela effects. Toilet Bowl Earth says Mandela is fake and blank blank blank. Yeah, it is. Actually, it is fake. But it's real in the sense that there is an effect. It's just not reality shifting. The effect is all in their minds. It's like the curve is in your mind if you're a glurf. The shifts are in your mind if you're a shifty, transdimensional, Menduzled person. No judgment. If you want to believe it, but just know that you're a believer in something that's tantamount to a paranormal concept or possibly maybe even new agey. But the problem is it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of memory. It's not a path to enlightenment. And as soon as I let a lot of them know this, they started calling me the God blocker. Like, I'm blocking God because I told you the truth. Like, I'm sorry your God's fake, not my problem. I also happen to be a globe blocker in a sense, insofar as my mission here is to remove this idol as sheerly, it's really just an object of worship. It's idol worship. But beyond just the sheer idolatry, it's about worldview and what we can know versus what we can merely claim to know. And I like to be on solid ground here. And the world stage is shifty. In fact, the mainstream mediated mind is very Manduzled. You could look at the Ministry of Truth and the way that they can write history and prefabricate things as an example of how things are seemingly Mandela affected. But there's nothing supernatural about it. CERN has nothing to do with it. It's all about your misperceptions. And these are calculated misperceptions introduced through that screen. And we're at a point now where we're filtering. We're filtering new people into the raft, new ideas, not necessarily new ideas, but expanding the parallel media outside the constraints of the mainstream. And there's a default position that I've been challenging wherever I see it, and I want to get your thoughts on it. I want to get your thoughts on this notion because we talk about predictive programming a lot. And many people find it hard to believe that there could be such media control. And they introduce something supernatural. And today I saw a tweet by Illusion Warfare who said, "We live in a false reality. Officer 33 front and center." And if you look at the picture, it looks framed to convey a very specific message. And he says, "There's not a team of Freemason humans running around making sure it's always 33. Nope. It's way beyond that." And I understand why people arrive at that because the level of repetition, predictability about these patterns, it is beyond the capacity of a few people to arrange in every event. It couldn't possibly be. It's not fakeable on that scale. That's just not within the realm of possibility, and that's not what we're saying. In order to account for all this pattern making and the predictive programming, the merging with real and fake movies and the news, you have to account for the fact that the news is pre-scripted when it comes to the major televised events. And that's not a stretch. It's not a fantasy. It's not mere conjecture. Every psychological operation has what? A director, writers, a script, actors, production crew. And it's implemented on the world stage and treated as a scene in history. And it becomes part of the historical record, even as our real experiences are swept into the dustbin. So, in other words, this is the rule, not the exception. And the further in advance they plan the events, the more control they'll have over the minutiae. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that major mainstream news events could be full of predictable and repetitious patterns. It's not that far-fetched. If you look at these things as staged, and then you take that word to its fullest definition, staged in the most literal sense. And the world stage is also a magic show. And one thing about magic shows is that they don't really do magic, but the way that you're seated relative to the magician gives it the appearance of magic. And my final point here is it's important not to default to magic because we can't explain how it works. Okay, let's see who has joined us. We have Ted Striker 2112. Right, you mentioned the derailment. We'll look into that some more. Symbia says the Mandoozled mind, they can't find it. It shifted to another reality. Max X, thank you for joining. Toilet Bowl Earth says, don't you have an audiobook about the Mandela effect, or is that somebody else? You're making a different case now. Yes, I made a joke book, Mandela Effect Magic. Not a joke book, but it was a hypothetical. I was like, let's pretend this is true, and that it's somehow an effect on reality itself, and that the people who are experiencing it are transcending and arriving at a better reality together, and that it's like a breakaway reality. It's a nice fantasy, I suppose, if you need that kind of escapism, which I don't. But no, I wrote that as a joke to annoy somebody who had greatly annoyed me when he had mocked the death of a friend, and I published it, and it happens to sell, and people can't tell it's not serious. James Osman says, 56 years old, don't remember Jupiter's rings. How are Saturn's rings going to disappear? Yeah, how are Saturn's rings going to disappear? They're surprisingly thin, and to me that's amazing that they're visible at that distance. You know, one of the things that I find conspicuously absent from space, where's all the clouds? You're telling me there's no space clouds? Millions and millions of miles between our eyeballs and the nearest planet, and there's not one instance throughout human history where a space cloud has occulted this or that planet or star. Nope, never. No such thing as space clouds, apparently. Despite the tonnage of space dust raining down on the atmosphere every day, according to what we're told, it never aggregates in an amount sufficient to block a star millions of miles away. Now, I find that hard to believe. Maybe I'm just incredulous, but when there's a little bit of a dust storm, I can't see the horizon 8 miles away. So, why can I see Mars with millions and millions and millions of miles of all kinds of asteroids, debris, space junk, and whatever else? Symbia says, where are the space chemtrails? Well, space environmentalism is a thing. And there may not be space chemtrails, but I have seen on the right from Tim Pool, interestingly, they were talking about maybe climate change is real. And it's just not coming from capitalism and our fossil fuels, but it's coming from the solar minimum or solar maximum, they were saying. In other words, they will find a way to suggest that there are other things from space that we ought to be worried about. Space chemtrails. And the chemtrail theory, of course, we killed it. Might as well just say it. It's dead. And there's only one point that needs to be argued on this: predictability. When you can predict them, then we can talk. But they're positively correlated with atmospheric conditions, altitude, and pressure, and have been and are measurably so. Therefore, they cannot be caused by an arbitrary spray that they turn off and on, but rather they are a byproduct of hot jet exhaust. The predictability kills the theory. So, no, Mandela effect fake, chemtrails fake. Toilet Bowl Earth says space is fake anyway, so why debate if Jupiter has rings? It's pointless inundation. It's what I call fake fake. Like pyramids on Mars. Or Buzz Aldrin said there's a monolith on Phobos, the moon of Mars. If you're debating whether or not there's a face on Mars or a pyramid on Mars, you've accepted the premise that Mars exists as a ball Earth-like object, as a quote planet as described. So you're already, or same with the moon. Are there alien bases on the back of the moon? When you get into that realm, you're already accepting the premise that space travel is real. So, no, as far as I'm concerned, space is a modern iteration of the archaic concept of heaven. It's not somewhere you can physically go. It's a utopian vision so they can sell you a way to live on Earth. So we will live on Earth as they are purported to be living on Mars. Space communism. That's what's coming down to Earth. And I make it a point here to say that when I refer to space, for the most part, people here know my frame of reference. But for those who don't, who accept it as real, there's a whole lot you're accepting when you just accept the premise. For example, James Fetzer wrote an excellent book, and I have a signed copy. I suppose we didn't go to the moon either. Great takedown of the moon landing, but he's never questioned space travel. Oh, that still exists. Space station, even though it's way cornier and faker than Apollo 11, you look at the space station, it's like, yeah, that's real. Or there's a secret space program that took us to the moon. That's what Alex Jones says. So wait a minute, we've debunked the moon landing, so now you're saying, no, it did happen, but it was a different vehicle. Or they come up with all kinds of explanations, but I have to start with the point of, do we even know the Earth is a discrete, disparate object hovering in some vast abyss, so-called space? Do we even know that to be true? And when I suggest that there should be space clouds, I'm saying based on their model, there ought to be. But there aren't any. And oftentimes the illusion can be given away by what should be there but isn't. And if space is as vast as they say, if there is as much debris, dust, and whatever else out there, it ought to aggregate enough that there should be regular cloud cover. I mean, if it was as described, I think it would look a lot more interesting. But I don't even give them that. Like, I won't even, I call it fake fake because, okay, the premise of the moon landing's fake, and now if we're debating whether there's alien bases, well, now we're debating whether something is real or fake on something that's already been established as fake or hasn't been established as real. There's layers to this, and, well, it's boxes within boxes. And the irony of it is, and the genius of the trap, it's diabolical, is that those who fancy themselves awakening go deeper into the box. It's like Plato's cave has an exit sign, they run towards it, and it's just a deeper level. Speaking of Plato's cave, I need to watch. I'm going to binge watch tonight. I re upped my Amazon Fallout. Need to keep up with that because we're trying to keep up with the meta script. I checked out Civil War and get ready for a female president. Get ready for Trump to get it. I mean, that movie is just propaganda. And one of the main themes is strong female protagonists, even in the movie trailers that preceded it. Furiosa, a Mad Max like movie. And Mad Max is kind of one of these instances of, I guess, life imitating art or something. I have a friend who's on jury duty, and they're not able to tell me specifics, but I've been advised stay away from the gas stations in this city when it's dark. Like, that's where most people are getting victimized. Not a surprise. I already knew that. I used to joke about it. I'd say, hey, You want to get shot? Let's go down to the Maverick. It's like I know which ones not to go to where you will likely get shot. Okay, let's continue. Fallout is alright, says Mango Penguins. I'm only looking at it for the predictive programming value and the fact that it's Jonathan Nolan, brother of Christopher Nolan, who did Oppenheimer. And they have a third brother you may not have heard of. His name is Matthew Nolan, and he goes by Oppenheimer, and he's a hitman. Toilet Bowl Earth says Fallout was actually decent for the normal mainstream tea cesspool we're accustomed to. I've been watching it maybe one episode through, and I'm not familiar with the game at all. But so far, I like what I've seen, and it has a number of themes that I'm picking up on. One of them being the people in these deep underground survivalist bunkers. It's kind of actually luxury living compared to the people on the surface, and it seems to me that rising to the surface means a leveling, and it's almost like the inverse of the elite, the 1% having their wealth distributed. Now a big leveling of society, and they're brought down. Only they're coming up from the bottom, but symbolically it's the same thing. It seems like the detached from reality class that has that privilege is now having to merge with the quote real world, the street level. Everything about it says revolution, after the burning down of Babylon or whatever, and it kind of reminds me of Leave the World Behind, of course, similar themes. It's about a leveling, a reckoning. That was the meaning of 1619 and the White Lion ship hitting the beach. Toilet Bowl Earth, great question. Says, okay, you don't believe in. Oh, wait, you believe in predictive programming. Do you believe they have to tell you? No, not at all. Predictive programming is mystified on purpose. There are operatives and agents and a lot of mockingbird truthers who don't know what they're doing when they say, oh, they have to tell us because otherwise the karma is too bad. They're trying to get our consent by showing us what they're going to do. And this was said with regard to white noise. InfoWars said the reason why the train derailment in Ohio was a match of white noise is that the dark occultists in the media have to tell you to get your consent. It's called revelation of the method. Very mystical stuff, very dark, very theatric. I used to buy that. And the reason they do this is so you don't recognize the role of media in shaping worldview. They're not reporting, they're not providing information, they're providing a worldview. They're not trying to inform you, they're trying to conform you. And they do it successfully all the time. But their main, I guess, MO, their main operation here is revolves around getting you to accept and believe the news. Not know it's true, because you can't most of the time, but to believe it. And they want the masses to be believers, which is fundamentally different than knowers. Believers, followers versus knowers, seekers. This is why they're demonizing independent researchers all the time. So this is their MO. But the main way they get you to believe everything is through repetition, propaganda. And predictive programming is simply repeating propaganda messages in advance, acclimating you to narratives, to archetypes, to images, to scenarios, so you pre-decide what you're going to do when it happens. Predictive programming is like advertising and any other type of covert manipulative marketing tactics. And it makes perfect sense when you look at the record of Netflix, predictive programming, and concurrent. Whereas predictive refers to in the past this thing happened in a movie and it relates to what happened here, sure. And oftentimes it's with nuance, it's very targeted. But more often than not, we're finding that if you want to see what's on the news today, watch Netflix today. It's like real time aligning these things, which shouldn't be possible. Look at the timing of Waco, American Apocalypse. The next day, Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco and says this is the final battle. That type of alignment is the result of the unity, and this is structural. The unity between the quote entertainment programming and the news programming. It's all programming. The people who think predictive programming is because they have to tell us are actually missing the real truth here. What they're missing here is that predictive programming is standard operating procedure. And why wouldn't they want you to know this? Because then you would figure out that there's no distinction between any of these various programming outlets. It's monolithic. And then what's more, they hide it by saying, well, there's no way man could do this. It's too complicated. It's too much. It's like, no, I can point to many examples that would contradict that, and you cannot point to one specific example where the only way this could happen is if God did it. It's like arguing for the divine authorship of your holy books. It's like, no, man wrote it. Just hands down. Look, end of the discussion. Man wrote your holy book. You can't say that a supernatural being came down. Maybe man channeled it. Aleister Crowley supposedly channeled the devil or whatever and wrote the Book of the Law. Did he channel it? No, a human being wrote it. We cannot ascribe to the divine or the supernatural without first ruling out every other possibility. And when you point to specific examples of predictive programming, are you going to say this could only have been done by an angel or a gremlin or some supernatural non-human supercomputer thing? That's always the default, and I'm saying that's a misinformation line that's hiding not only how integrated everything is, but how they're quite literally writing the news in advance. And I'm not talking about every single minute news story, obviously. We're talking about mainstream transformative psyops. But it doesn't matter because all of the other stories are there to get you into the state of thinking, okay, the news is reflecting reality. Because good liars don't lie with every breath. That's what bad liars do. You can't trust them. Good liars know to only lie when you're vulnerable to falling for it. The rest of the time, they tell the truth to gain your trust. That's the distinction between good liars and bad liars. You trust the good ones. The media is a very good liar. So they have armies of useful idiots faithfully reflecting reality. Of course, it's framed according to their frame of reference. They have total editorial control. The worldview monopolists, so that most of the time they're telling the truth, but then when they pull off some big operation, nobody questions it. Upside Down Guy says, don't take a wrong turn in Albuquerque. Good advice. Max X says, I imagine season 2 will have lots of predictive programming since it's set in New Vegas. The Hoover Dam was an integral part of the game. Now, the Hoover Dam was prominently featured in Westworld, the end of season, I believe it was season 4, or the beginning of season 4. And when that episode was on, we were talking about it because Hoover Dam had this explosion. And this drew our attention to the Transformers movie, where beneath the Hoover Dam, there's some big black cube computer that houses the entities of the Transformers. Fascinating subtext here. But the Hoover Dam had some great significance to the general narrative of the Kraken, Hades, and Persephone, stuff that was pretty prominent throughout 2022. Joined by X322777. Mango Penguin says, do you want some predictive programming? Go to my channel. There lurks predictive treasure. Now, everything is vaguely predictive programming in the sense that it's framed by the mainstream. And by framed, I mean they lie by omission more than anything. So everything you're watching, maybe it doesn't have a specific identifiable predictive programming agenda. However, it takes place in their world where everything that they reported happened, all the lies, the fake history, the false models. Yeah, the world of fakery, the world stage, the agreed upon mass delusion, that's the backdrop for everything you see. So everything is essentially predictive programming if it's within that paradigm. And good luck finding anything else, finding anything at all that isn't within it. I mean, you want to entertain yourself because the news is terrible? Well, play the video game Fallout. Play Modern Warfare 3. Try to find a game that isn't preparing you for what's going to happen on the news. Okay, let's see here. Anufel says, women have a crush on one zombie cowboy in Fallout. Well, cannibalism is a thing right now. I hope we're not moving into, was it necrophilia? Now, speaking of paraphilias, I've identified one. Hitlerphilia. They don't, the Hitler fan club, and I get them on BitChute all the time. They accuse me of being an Israeli agent, just nonsense. And I'm like, I don't even think they know what they're talking about. I don't even think they care. They're some of the least educated people in Trutherville. They're just, ignorant buffoons for the most part. But I'm starting to think that maybe it's not about race or nationalism or any of that. I think they might literally have some kind of a like attraction for Adolf Hitler, like literally. Just a guess, maybe not a guess, it's just an observation. They literally want to go there with him. All right, let's continue here. Mango says minds are being buffered. Stranger Days says that my internet. Yeah, it could be your mind, could be your internet, could be me. Anuful says predictive programming is giving opium to truthers to make them feel special by make them think that the elites are talking to them by the media that's fascinating. Like religious people say they speak to God. I have seen instances where people see predictive programming as evidence that they are not NPCs. Sort of like, oh, you don't see chemtrails? You must be an NPC zombie. Apparently, I am one. I'm just an NPC. I can't think or I'm a shill. And some people who note the predictive programming laugh and scoff at the notion that it's mere coincidence, which is what normies will say. And they're correct about that. You're right. It's not mere coincidence. Anybody saying so is not paying attention. The question here is, what is it? And I think the conclusion people rush to is that it's because of some divine higher mind slash supercomputer. They insert something to rule out man. And that's wrong. It's the wrong direction. It's just not, it's just literally incorrect. There's nothing right about saying, hmm, it's amazing how controlled the news is. We know they run psyops, we know they fake space, but there's no way they fake everything. Therefore, it must be a higher power. It's like saying that the media is divinely inspired. And some will argue that. They'll say, well, maybe these artists are just in touch with the zeitgeist and they're vibing in the studios and they write this stuff and it just happens to predict. No, not happening. Giving them too much credit, and you're hiding the men behind the curtain, the people behind the curtain. You're hiding the true infrastructure here and how deep we are in the mess. Like, look, we're not out of Plato's cave collectively whatsoever, not even close. And it's worse because the truthers go deeper. If you're at the point where you're seeing magic in media, you're like, well, look, I may not believe in religion or the Bible being divinely inspired, but I see it in the news. Okay, well, that is misdirection, deep misdirection. And it's not all that different from the Mandela effect. If you accept a supernatural explanation over the mundane, that's on you. But if you do, you owe it to yourself to find God, to just follow it all the way. You're going to assert that predictive programming must be a higher mind. Find me one example and say this is evidence of God. God did this. God's fingerprint is on this news story here. And then we can debate the merits of it. 777 says demiurge. See, there may be a demiurge department within the government. Like Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, that name may just reference the cube, cube brick. It may reference the black box, the Saturnian cube, the matrix symbol, the symbol of this time-space prison, the black monolith TV screen, the movie screen that we've all merged with, symbolizing the merging of the real with fake, meta with the meat verse. And I would suggest that this department is NASA, or at least NASA's real job isn't, let's take man to Mars at some future date. No, NASA's program has always been controlling space, inner space, your mind. And outer space, for all we know, is just up. Symbia says, pretty sure Q works for the Demiurge department. Yeah, that's an important point. Because I'm working on a documentary to dox Q effectively, and there is no way you could separate the department that Q is a part of that was used to create this mythos to motivate fringe on the right and create this whole perception of this war and the deep state thing. You couldn't separate him from the PSYOP department, which makes perfect sense now that I think about the movies that this person was in and his brother's proximity to Pat Robertson. We're talking mind control in movies, mind control in religion, mind control in politics. Like he's in one of these elite families or something. Ryla05 says Christianity was forced down people's throats by the sword. This started in Europe. Wait until you have to convert to Martian. It's like convert or die. Like they could flip a switch and Earth will become Mars. I think it's that simple. Think O'Brien in Suite 101, Ministry of Love, when he's torturing Winston O. Smith and he's talking about how arbitrary reality is from their perspective. And they can't change reality, they can't change the physical reality. But what they can do is they can change our internal concept. He said, "What are the stars?" This is from 1984. "What are the stars?" said O'Brien indifferently. Quote, "They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if they wanted to." And he's just describing that they could change the world into whatever, and people will believe it. 2 plus 2 is 5. And we live in such a world. 2 plus 2 is whatever you want it to be. Because reality is fluid, because it's nothing but competing belief systems. And none of them cancel out the others because none of them are based in objective reality. Objective reality was obliterated by the nuke. Now, nukes are fake, but they use fake nukes to obliterate objective reality and put us into the realm of the subjective that they entirely control. All right, let's see. Your commenter says, "What's all this figuring out getting you? What's the end game?" Okay, here's one of the end games here for me personally is by recognizing that mass media has supplanted all of the old religions at every level, esoteric, exoteric, that it's provided a heaven that even the atheists will believe in. It's unified mankind like nothing else. It's become clear that there is no new world order coming. The world's not ending. The old world order is updating itself, and it's been going through a process of updating since, like the beginning of last century, the new age. But my point in figuring this thing out is that my entire life has been about figuring out what life is about. Why would this be any different? And I find out that, yeah, there is a conspiracy, multiple layers of it. A conspiracy to keep the masses in ignorance and darkness, and people are weirdly incurious about anything that goes outside of their expectations. So I'm driven here to understand the architecture of mass deception and how it works. It's a philosophical pursuit. And it's kind of akin to film criticism because that's kind of what we do. We're analyzing it from the perspective of film critics, looking at art, propaganda, and how propaganda influences reality. So I guess you could say this is conspiratainment and philosophy. So the end game is figuring it out. And let's say we're wrong. Like I'm open to the possibility that I'm wrong. Like I'm wrong about everything, and the mass media has never lied, and everything that you've ever heard on the news is true. Okay, well then we have collectively, through some kind of communal storytelling, came up with the most interesting alternate version of things conceivable. We've actually come up with a conceivable model that could explain total control globally. But I don't think we're wrong. But the next step here is to break away from controlled opposition because nobody is unprogrammed. You're born into this, you're programmed as you go, you're conditioned to accept future programming, that is, your mental immune system is stripped away. You exit the school systems with mind aids, and you believe everything that is transmitted to the screen. So you're programmed, and then you're filled with misinformation. And if you are not paying attention, you're simply under misinformed. You're not closer to the truth. To get the truth, you have to be informed, and you can't get informed unless you reject their frame, meaning you have to include things that they exclude, specifically psychological operation, news bending, perception management, and the integration of media globally. My contention here is that the only way out or to get any sort of clarity and to advance our objective here is to get all of the deprogrammed, those who have volitionally left the programming, onto one sheet. And it's not Trutherville. It's not anywhere near Alex Jones Town with whatever they're drinking and their Kool-Aid. It's not near Q Town, Q Street, leaving those menthol heads alone. We have to break away from all of the programming. And we're going into a quarantine, you could say. And then the next step from there is I have more. Actually, I've talked about this at length. If anybody actually cares, I'm not sure if anybody cares about what the big goal is here. I mean, does anybody here not know? I guess I could explain it. The purpose of producing the auto hoax Ology 101 is that there isn't a philosophical framework for understanding the world today, taking into account the inescapable immersive illusion. It's just inescapable. It's not an intelligence test, it's not a litmus test of any kind. It's that there isn't an option out. If you are mainstream, you're in the box, you're aware of all this stuff and you believe in it, even though you've become, out of necessity, apathetic about it. And the apathy is programmed into this thing. If you begin to stir from your apathy, what happens? Well, you might want to look deeper. And let me bring out this chart so I can show you what I'm describing. So this chart represents the world stage, which is a closed system. It's your internal concept of the world, and it's the one that is shared by the consensus. You can look at it from the big, I guess, far back, God's eye view. This is the globe. It's getting hotter. Scarcity. It once got hit by a big rock. Aliens might be out there. So you have the stage that we all accept, and that's our consensus frame. And then within that, you have a lot of disagreements. But the big agreement starts with the big picture. I mean, with the exception of flat earthers, everybody's on the same sheet. Funnily enough, until flat earthers, conspiracy theorists were all on the same sheet. There was not an opt out. There wasn't something outside of the mainstream model. And whether the model is completely wrong or not is immaterial. It's about whether you accepted the world view as portrayed through that ubiquitous screen. So the world stage is a closed system of ideas in the sense that they exclude stuff that contradicts it. You exist within it, you're in Normalville. So Normiville is this big blue box. Everybody's here. If you wake up and you lean politically to the left, you're going to go into Woke Town, where, yeah, the normies are awake, or not awake. They're sleeping. They're apathetic. They're not paying attention. They're not outraged. So the people who lean left tend to go, quote, woke, where they have a more thorough explanation of everything and they can do something about it. It's about becoming active. So now they're fighting the system. But if you lean right, you fall into Trutherville, which is just right-wing woke, where you see the world as a bunch of people sleeping and you recognize you have to wake them up. And that's why truthers are always typified as trying to wake people up. And they're always saying, well, people are waking up. People are waking up. Every episode of InfoWars ends with things are really bad. George Soros is burning the world down, but people are waking up. Just keep spreading the news. So it's all about proselytizing to the sleepers. My point being, the worldview of Trutherville and the one of Woketown are subsets of Normiville. They don't reject the basic premise. They operate with the wrong operating system. Their operating system with Trutherville is the news is lying, so the events are either real or false flags, which means real or real, but they're lying about how it happened. So nowhere in their frame of reference is fakery. Alex Jones and Sandy Hook is well known. He told the truth about it once, didn't get the whole truth, didn't connect it to the wider picture, and then he backed up and moved away from it. The fact of it is, his job was to run laps around one big tree in a forest of fakery. He's running around this one big tree called Sandy Hook for 10 years, and nobody notices hundreds of other fake trees behind him. That's by design. There's a forest of fakery, a forest of misinformation that we have to clear cut here. So, my point being here, anybody with a conscience goes from apathetic blue pill into either Woketown or Trutherville. Neither of these options take you closer to the truth. These are caves within the main cave of, from the Plato's cave analogy. So these would constitute the programmed. The denizens of Normiville, Woketown, Trutherville are the programmed. Above them are the programmers. Who are the programmers? The programmers would be Metascript departments, the real operation behind the space program, and this is global. Remember, International Space Station. Space Station. You might think, oh, it's China versus Russia versus America, and we're all in competition. No, sorry, we're all part of the same space program. The biggest lie of all. So we should go ahead and disabuse ourselves of the idea that there are different governments. There's government. It's ubiquitous. It's one. And so the programmers are knowers. They're a class. It's an elitist thing. They know what's real and not to some extent. It's on a need to know basis for sure, but they're more in the know than the mere believers. So you have the programmers and the programmed. Outside of the box, though, aside from the programmed, you have a newly emerging group here, the deprogrammed. These would be the non believers, the media skeptics, and the auto hoaxers. My objective here is to amass the deprogrammed. And the way we do it is we create a distinct group aside from Trutherville that nonetheless takes the stance that the mainstream media is lying, but we also include that the alt media is lying. And that's the trap. They think, oh, mainstream's lying, so let's join the truthers. And they put on their truther gear and they think that they're now exponents of truth. No, it doesn't work that way. You're a liar as long as you're on the world stage. The cliche, tell lie vision, or the word belief with lie in the middle. These are actually useful to describe what we're looking at. You're in the box, you're a liar. And I'm sorry to say it if it offends you, but you are a liar by default. It makes a liar out of you, it divorces you from truth and reality. But everybody's lying in the same way, so it's okay. So, again, following this, the quarantine, the breakaway, the parallel media, which is not anti media, that's Trutherville. Anti media, it's getting demonized, and we're not anti media. It's like we're enjoying the process of understanding it and deconstructing it. Why would we be against it? I describe it as parallel media for a reason. Because the historical, we're talking about media itself, like the history of media is just a history of the power elite's version of things. So you look at the news media, it becomes history going back. And we don't have a clear history that includes every psyop, that makes note of what is fake outside of ourselves and what we have been doing since we started this. So I'm referring to this thing as a parallel media because we're over the guardrails. We're not taking part in any of their info wars, but we're tracking along with it real time, monitoring it, describing it, observing it, and understanding it as it unrolls, as it unfolds. But the next part, then, of course, is to uh, challenge certain truth or orthodoxies. That's where we find out who is even capable of stepping outside the box. And I can say unequivocally that Woketown cannot exit. They are married to big government. They are porous. They are open to total control and domination. It's kind of sadomasochistic in a way. It's definitely toxic. Woketown is not worth bothering. The Normieville, no point. They're blissfully dreaming and they're apathetic. I don't want to wake the normies. My sole intention here is to break down the barriers that hold people in Trutherville who would otherwise be stumbling upon the truth at some point if it weren't for these big distraction agents. And I think we need about 10,000. When we get 10,000, we will have achieved what I call critical raft. And at that point, we'll be in a better position to move on to the next phase. And the next phase largely revolves around the Insider tabloid. As far as my perspective, I think we need to merge the metaverse with the meatverse. We have to become a physical presence in the world, and that's the next stage. So, in other words, on the world stage, we all know about politics, left, right, controlled, but people don't think of it as mainstream alternative controlled in the same way. There isn't a platform on the world stage for media critics, for true skeptics, for non believers. It doesn't exist. There aren't enough of us yet. Well, there are, but we're not amassed in one group. And it's not megalomaniacal. It's actually a very productive, I think, it's a very productive and useful endeavor here because we're bringing in some of the most perceptive and insightful minds to the problem of our time, which is what I think it is. We're dealing with a system that weaponizes ignorance and logical fallacies, mind effery, and it turns people into Trumans in their own little Truman shows. I mean, this is truly madness, and there is no objectivity in the world. Like I said, they annihilated it. I'm not looking for things to solve toilet bowl Earth. This is a philosophical issue. You see, we have endured a mass philosophical inversion. Toilet bowl Earth says, and then what? Here's what: enjoy your life. I advocate for inactivism. I suggest that the InfoWar itself is a losing game, and if you're playing, you're automatically losing. So stepping outside of it and then from there figuring it out. But for one thing, unplugging from their obligatory cycle of believe this, the next day, the next current thing, accept this, believe this, react to this. The reacting to the endless flood of propaganda, yeah, that can you can change that and you can replace it with maybe responding, replacing the state of being misinformed with one of being informed. And if you don't see the value, the intrinsic value in being informed, disabused of lies, and then I can't really help you. I mean, it's like, why would you read? Why would you think? And I suggest that at some point they're going to condition us to where we won't even need question marks anymore because people won't ask questions. Why are you asking questions? They give us all the answers. Like, I can't help you if the chemtrails have affected you and you no longer have curiosity. Ryler05 says, normies worship money, spectacle, herd mentality, and the false religions. Absolutely. Now, the reason why these labels are important is they matter. There's a difference between somebody who is a strict conformist to what's on the screen and someone who questions it in a few different ways. There's a few reasons why it makes a big difference, but labels are important. The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their right names, and so that's the starting point. But if you're thinking here, because this has been the trend, most truthers are triggered. Like we look at the woke and they're always triggered. That's what defines them. Liberals being triggered, it's fun to trigger them for the right. That's kind of how the right wing has identified itself. We will do whatever triggers the left. Well, they're just as triggered and morally outraged. And there's this thing called the Bubba effect, where conspiracy theorists are taught that when they come to take the guns, you're going to run for the hills with your guns and your Bibles, and you're going to get ready to fight the system. And that's a doomsday scenario. And what I'm suggesting here is that the world stage as constructed is built around a doomsday. You may not think that it makes logical sense to say we're in the end times, the world's going to end. If you think that, you've been deceived by religion. That's easy to see. But if you believe mainstream science, you believe we are in the end times. So Toilet Bowl Earth, it says, and then what? Why don't you call in? Because I don't know what you're confused about. You're like, I take another breath, I'm alive for another minute, and then what? Eat the next meal, and then what? Like, if you don't have an internal sense of purpose, good for you. You know, there's plenty of things you can do to amuse yourself while you're here. But I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm not here to tell you what your purpose in life is. Like, a lot of people don't care. Enjoy the brainwashing. You know, enjoy it. If you like Mentonol, if that's your thing, do it. If you want to be a woker, do it. Whatever gives your life purpose and meaning. But I'm suggesting here that there is no objective reality within their frame. And stepping outside of it is not something that's been done yet. There's a huge philosophical vacuum. And the vacuum is where objectivism would reside, where atheism properly would reside. And when I say atheism, I don't mean not believing in God necessarily. I'm talking about proper criticisms of what religion is. Because the irony of it is, the greatest atheistic minds of our time have all fallen into the religion of scientism and accepted an alternate end times, an alternate eschatology, an alternate system of sin and salvation. Objectivism filtered itself through the TV, through the news media, never became strictly objective. And it all has to do with, again, this inversion. Our head's gone through the screen. TBE says, someone says TBE is a troll. No, he's asking questions. He's not a troll. But there are good questions and bad questions. There are bad faith questions, and there are questions that really suggest that you haven't done your own homework. You can call in if you want, but if you're asking what is the point to try to understand what's happening in the world, I'm like, you're in the wrong place, wrong saloon. Like, in fact, this world caters to people who are incurious or see no value in knowledge itself or understanding really why there would be an intention to deceive mankind. And these are all valid questions, but you say NASA's lying. Can we even trust them about the world? And some people just like, why would they even lie? And they ask these questions as though the question is a refutation of the points you've raised. But those aren't bad questions, Mr. Toilet Bowl Earth. They're valid questions because we're talking about these bigger picture. I mean, these are actually kind of big questions, and it is philosophical at this point. And it comes down to skepticism. You have non-skeptical media, which is mainstream, and then you have alternative media, which is only skeptical of the mainstream, and then vice versa. So there is no truly objective standpoint, is my point. Toilet Bowl Earth says, "Do you believe in God?" Okay, which God? Name the God. Zeus, Jehovah. Which God? Name the God. Do you believe in God? Like that is just such an absurd question to me. It's like, do you realize that you're not the only person on earth, that the place where you were born, the family you came from, like they don't represent humanity. It's much bigger than that. So which God? Do you believe in my God? Do you see things the way I do? Like, and I don't even take people seriously on the internet if they're like, I'm a Christian. It's like, you're not a Christian if you're on the internet. You should be in church. If you're on X, if you're on Twitter, that's not very Christian. That place is okay. See, again, like, how do you know? And I'm not saying that the pedo prophet is accurate or either. I think all these characters are just shady. But look, I'm not interested in old school mind control, old school fake news propaganda. It's all the same. You can replace the black monolith of mainstream media, the iPhone in your hand, the ubiquitous worldview we're given through it, with any holy book. These are filters. These are filters for worldview formation. It blinkers you and it puts you in the position you need to be for them to control you. I don't find any value in regimented mind control systems. Scientology, Christianity, Islam, or scientism. I'm not really a religious person. In fact, the biggest religion of all is the one we're deconstructing. And so I have someone coming over here and they're like, "Oh, you're seeing through the fake new religion, but will you buy my old religion that used to be used to kill and oppress people?" No thanks. Your system is based on psyops and control. Guilt, and sin, and these concepts have all been brought back with this new system. Your carbon footprint. COVID is a devil the atheists will believe in. But no, I'm really not interested in anybody's religion at all. You can go to church where you should be. You shouldn't be here if you're a believer, because what I'm working on here is fostering a culture of non-believers. And if your whole purpose to being here is to be a believer, yeah, you should go be with other believers. You can reinforce each other. It's very edifying, I hear. Symbia says, "Toilet bowl Earth, would Jesus approve of you calling his Earth a toilet?" Interesting question. Ryler05 says, "Couldn't get people to believe in sin and sex, so they changed sin to STDs." Yes, yes. In fact, you can find a pretty strong pattern of taking archaic concepts and bringing them back under the guise of science. I would even argue that heliocentrism is a modern iteration of ancient sun worship. But no, if you're a religious person and you're trying to recruit me, just stop. I'm slamming the door in your face. If you're coming in pairs on bikes, I'm putting a stick in the spokes. Like, I am not cool with religious proselytizers, whether you're mainstream media advocates or you're advocating for some religious cult, some archaic mind control system. Like, no thanks. I don't want it. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in Gaia? No. I don't believe in Gaia. I don't believe in Gaia's wrath. I don't even believe that the earth exists. I know the universe exists as we experience it, but I don't know if it exists before we experience it. It exists as a memory after. But as far as the earth as a discrete object suspended in space, I think that's a lie. Joined by we, thank you for joining. Stranger Days, thanks for joining. But whenever somebody asks me, which God do you believe in God? I'm like, okay, I can't take that question seriously. I'm sorry. You need to be more inclusive. I mean, which God? And if we're going to be completely honest, mm, maybe we shouldn't be. Let's change the subject because Gaia is the new God to reckon with. Like when I said atheism the other day, or even today, we've been talking about this. I've been talking about the concept of atheism as a methodology for rejecting a premise of a divine authorship, of a divine source as defined by the other side. So this guy comments and he's like, "Do you believe in God?" Well, he means his God, which is probably a reflection of him. And who knows what he's like, his values, his version of things. And I want to reject that. But mainly here, the God construct is what I'm talking about. I don't believe in his God construct. I can just say that unequivocally. Whatever God construct he was selling, I don't believe it. And I don't believe the mainstream God construct, Gaia, floating, vulnerable, but also mad at us because we're like a virus. I don't believe in their space, heaven, its utopianism, or even its supposed reality. No, I don't. I think it's all just a utopian scam. And the symbolism reveals it all. Okay, let's see here. Ryler says TBE should call in. Yeah, religious nutcases, I'm sorry, religious recruiters are welcome to call in. If you want to call in and try to recruit me to your faith, go for it. But I come from a place of objectivity and I've done my due diligence. I was raised in a church and I thought I was a Catholic, I thought Catholics were Christians. And then I was told by the internet that no, you're not a Christian. I'm like, whoa, I thought I was a Christian my whole life. I didn't know how divided it all was. Okay, phones are open now. 505 349 0420. I've, to be honest, though, I tried to read the Book of Mormon. I got extremely bored by its repetition. I like the Quran. At least I like what I've read of it. I mean, you can't argue against the literary value and meaning to the Bible too. This is I would not get rid of this stuff. I'm just saying I don't believe in their God constructs that they make out of it. We says also basically what the Buddha taught about the illusoriness of the physical world. See, I reject the idea that the physical world's an illusion. I think the power elite want us to think so. That's why sim theory is so popular. They want you to throw out all of it, not realize that only their version is fake. See, there's a fake version and the real version. The real meatverse exists. The metaverse is fluid. And the metaverse, under their control, is imposed through consensus onto the real thing. And if you point out the inconsistencies, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I think there's a war on objectivity. The atom bomb destroyed the objective world. And various philosophical constructs like the Mandela effect destroy the physical world. And I'm here to defend, look, all the environmentalists cry all day about Gaia. I'm the only person defending the real world. We're the only ones defending the objective reality as it exists. It's being maligned, twisted, warped, lied about. It's like Play-Doh. It's Play-Doh Earth. It's just clay. They make it into whatever they want it to be. But I think we have to stand firm, and that's why I say off-world stage. The world stage is Normieville. If you're in Truthyville or Woketown, you're deeper in. The only place where you can be described as deprogrammed is outside of their closed system. If your frame of reference does not include psyops, fake news, the sheer fakeability of it all, and an awareness of how fake it is and how news bent it is, then you're not outside of the box. That's why we study these events. For example, the recent immolation of Maxwell Azrello, who was inspired by the previous immolation of, it was Aaron Bushnell, like burning bush. We were looking at this thinking, okay, this looks real. But just because it looks real doesn't mean it is real. Your eyes can fool you. I'm seeing these examples recently of people seeing planes that seem to be levitating. And it's just because they're moving, it's moving, and they're not understanding the illusion. So they're running away with these wild theories about planes just levitating. And I try to explain to them, oh no, it's all perspective and parallax. And they tell me, no, I'm right about this. The plane was frozen in space. Fine, believe that. But it's your ego and your inability to admit that you're wrong that's going to lock you into a false paradigm if that's how you're going to go about things. You have to be willing to admit that you're wrong. So I look at this guy burning, I'm like, wow, that guy burned, that's terrible, that's sad. My eyes lied to me though, because as I looked into it, the story, like most of these stories, just fell apart. And as we dug into it, we found there's something called Zell gel. There are things called, in stunt terminology, they call these naked burns. There are gels they can put on you and set you on fire for special effects purposes. Everything we see on the news is up for debate as to whether or not it can be faked or not. And if you don't know how something's faked, you don't have to default to it's real. I don't know how they faked it, therefore it's real. I talked to one person, he goes by Boogeyman, and he's like, I don't believe in planes on 9/11 or the Pentagon, but I do believe in the jumpers. I'm like, you don't get to pick and choose. If any part of it's fake, it's all fake. Just rule of thumb. And just because you don't know how they faked the jumpers doesn't mean that they weren't faked. We don't go to magic shows like you're at your kid's birthday party and the clown does a magic trick and pulls a rabbit out of a hat. You don't know how it's done doesn't mean it came from another dimension or that it's real magic. You shouldn't default to magic. You shouldn't default to the supernatural. Not when you have all these elite playing God. They will be happy for you to think that the media is divinely inspired, that it's all just amazing coincidence. And there are coincidences, but there's a difference between meaningful coincidences and just the regular kind. And something else, too, another trend that we picked up on, and it's part of what I think is an active measure. We're noticing patterns, accurately discerning patterns. We're recognizing these things. We're describing it accurately. We're coming to a closer understanding, I think, of how predictive programming works. We're getting close to the mark here. It's advertising, it's repetition, it's subliminal, it's forming narratives and scenarios in your mind so you're pre-deciding how you're going to act when this thing occurs. So we're digging deeper into predictive programming, finding how, hey, this is entirely consistent with a massive mind control operation run by government through media, through politics, and through entertainment. It's very consistent and that has a lot of explanatory value. But then you have others coming along, and this is very popular on Twitter, and they will find this many days between this event and this event, add to this number, and then you combine it with this word, and you get this number, and before you know it, they have 50 data points to prove that the world ends tomorrow. And they say, hey, look, there's no way that the media is controlled by man because look at all these connections. Well, those are manufactured connections, and it took me a minute to figure out how they were creating the perception that they were accurate. And it's pretty simple now. It's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. You take five gematria calculators, you pick 20 random terms or targeted terms, whatever, and you come up with a few matches. Now, since you're not limited by anything, you don't have a set of parameters. You're just like anything that fits goes. You can make anything fit. You could make Nostradamus predict your day if you're vague enough about it. And that's what we're seeing. Vagueness, but also no parameters, no wrong answers. And that matters. And we witnessed this with the Taylor Swift. Okay, I don't know why my this I'm going to switch from Skype likely today. We're missing a lot of calls. Ringer is on. Just got a call by, looks like Isaac Clark. Now I can outbound call if you want me to. Going through some comments. Yeah, for some reason phones aren't working. I'm going to have to replace the phones. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yes, hello. How are you today, sir?
Very good. How are you on this Infinite Plane Saturnday?
I'm doing well, thank you, thank you. I'm just phoning in, just wondering if you'd be willing to share a few of your worldviews with me.
Sure, no problem. Any questions, I will answer.
So I've been dabbling in the flat Earth. I would absolutely appreciate your interpretation of that information.
Okay, well, right off, I reject the biblical model because I don't believe there is a model that you can point to. I reject the globe model, so that doesn't mean that I automatically get to replace it with something that feels better. I think the rejection of the globe model is a rational act of agnosticism, but all we're left with is our perceptions, which is you perceive it as what? Flat and stationary. That's your starting point unless you trust what's on the screen. So for me, it's more about worldview and where you get it, but it's more like the flat earth question, not a flat earth model. And that's why I reject the Bible, because it asserts that the Bible earthers will say we know it to be such. How are you approaching this?
I mean, I've been around the community for quite some time. At one point, I was a plate earther. I firmly believed that the Earth was a stationary plane surface. But things develop over time. You are acquainted with new information, new topics. I'm not entirely sold on the globe model myself, but I do feel like we live in something of a three-dimensional realm.
Right. Well, what about this question? Because for me, it comes down to open or closed. The globe is a closed system, scarcity, running out of everything, and it's isolated in the middle of nowhere. So that would be a closed system, which I think corresponds to our worldview. And when I'm asserting that that is fake or likely not 100% true, I'm saying there's more to it. So I try to approach this as an open system, and I'm looking for the boundaries. Haven't arrived at them yet. And same thing with how I view the worldview. I'm trying to take this as an open system, off-world stage, and not accepting the globe as presented. So for me, it's a philosophical posture that is breaking away from their assumed parameters and boundaries.
Are you familiar with the concept of Sheol?
That's the real concept of hell or like an underworld. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, describe it for me though, because that's all I know is really just the definition. It's like the Hebraic concept of hell, but it's not necessarily like. Well, yeah, please describe it.
I mean, there's a few interpretations of it. Like you're explaining, it could potentially be a real world hell, but I think it exists potentially on like another dimension.
Okay. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I'm looking at this thing from, of course, the worldview and how we arrive at things. And interestingly enough, I find a lot of explanatory value in this idea described in the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, where it has this notion of light at the top and then the kingdom at the bottom. And I think we exist on this spectrum where our souls are above and our bodies the densest level, but there may be a step lower. So it's like, for example, um, hell is described as down. It's like, yeah, it could be a deeper level of disconnection from our source. So, like, I'm not really opposed to the idea, but as far as it being a physical place, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned the tree of life, and that's an interesting place to start because if you believe in the ideas of as above, so below, there is the opposite to the tree of life, which is the tree of death or the tree of the Sephiroth, which is the inverted beliefs of the Kabbalic system.
Okay, now that we're on this topic, we look at the solar system where you have the sun in the middle and then the planets revolving around it on a plane. Most people don't know, or it's weird, the people who believe in it aren't generally aware,
Heliocentrism.
yeah, that the solar system's flat. But if you look at the model of it with the sun and the planets around it, I I actually think this. I think that space travel is not only fake, but that it's an analogy for ascending states of consciousness. And I think that if you look at the tree of life with the light on the top and then the kingdom on the bottom and the Sephiroth, these spheres, which are associated with the various planets in different ways, you're like, well, could it not be an analogous model? In other words, if space travel is an analogy for ascending states of consciousness, it would perfectly match with the idea of the tree of life, which maps consciousness from the material to the celestial or to the higher realms, earth to heaven. And I think there's something to that in the sense that we're operating in a realm, and the best we can describe it is as something that is a thing that's experienced as we live it as we experience it as a 3D model or whatever, but in reality, I don't think it exists until we experience it. So, like, is it even useful to talk about the Earth and its shape if we can't even determine if the Earth is an object in space? Maybe we are just in the universe itself.
Okay. Um, as far as planets are concerned, what do you think their role in the solar system serves? And do you believe that some of the NASA images that we see, do you believe those to be true, or do you think they're potentially hiding some aspects of our solar system from us?
I don't trust anything coming from so-called space because space is fake, which means that whenever we're given descriptions of these things, I take it with, you know, for example, there is some consistency, and it still is consistent with the symbolic systems. I think our modern paradigm is a reiteration of something archaic, and so I don't trust anything they give us from above. I think it's all just a replacement heaven, and that's pretty much why I think, for the most part, it's like space travel itself. I think again, it's the elite priesthood. You look at the ISS. What do they do up there? That's our priesthood telling us, look how bad you're treating the earth. God's going to punish you. They're moralizing. It's all about judging man, and we have to become one world so we don't wreck the earth. The idea of the blue marble was to make Earth itself an idol that we could worship. So I just look at the whole space program as a religious paradigm. It has nothing to do with science or real observation when it comes from the stuff from above.
Yeah, they truly are. They are esoteric priests from the old world. Have you ever watched the show Raised by Wolves by any chance?
Yeah, Ridley Scott, very good. Another one of these with a female protagonist, who, of course, yeah, Raised by Wolves has a
Yes,
space a
the
space
ascended
arc.
god, if you will.
Yes, and the arc, it had an arc and a space station falling. Very
Yep.
common theme in Netflix sci-fi,
Yeah, the angelic beings watching over the brood, if you will.
like the Elohim. Yeah, exactly. The idea of a plurality
Yep.
of gods in the Garden of Eden, and I think that's the story of the movie The Village, where it's the elders in their little commune. It's the Garden of Eden, and these are the Elohim, and the ones who figure out that it's fake get kicked out. And they find out it's fake by doing what? By going beyond the boundaries to where the red bushes are, the red berries, the bad color. And that's
So,
emblematic of the
to,
apple.
sorry to cut you off. The tree of Sephiroth. What do you think the symbolism in Raised by Wolves is for that?
I'm going to have to rewatch it because I watched it when it first came out. If you want to remind me, because I binge watched all the sci fi I could.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll give you a quick refresher. So like you were saying, one of the surviving members of the spacecraft crash, one of the members of the religious sect, not the atheists, he ends up becoming a quote false prophet, and they crucify him on the tree of Sephiroth after the serpent dies.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And they all have the sun, the solar symbol, and it's this
Yes.
religious. Okay. I think I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again. I like Ridley Scott's work, and there were probably some themes I missed. The main one I was picking up on at the time, because I'd watched it adjacent to Wheel of Time, is that it showed a very strong female presence as the dominating leadership role. Like even the 100, another movie with a space arc that crashes, and it's always the female rulers. And I think that's just preparing us, predictive programming wise, for accepting a female
Yes,
president.
the upcoming matriarchy, the flip between the patriarch and the coming rising of the matriarchy,
Exactly.
as it was in antediluvian times, allegedly.
Well, we had the rise of what? Barbie feminism as, and if you watch the movie Barbie, and I watched it for all of its predictive programming value, it's the Whore of Babylon. The color pink has tremendous significance in the occult, but it's the Barbie becomes a real woman, physically a woman, and then
The
Ken,
story of Pinocchio, and like you're saying, the pink chakra color being your crown, the highest ascension, the level of gnosis,
no,
if you
yep.
will.
Well, that's what she does, and but Ken, however, remains superfluous, basically useless, and the introduction of
Yeah, they really do portray the male role as being a dummy or a servant in that film, don't they? I haven't seen Barbie yet, but I am actually interested in the esoteric value of it.
Well, if you want to watch it from that perspective, you have to look at Margot Robbie's previous role in the movie Babylon, which was based on Hollywood
Okay.
Babylon, which was written by Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger did a movie with
Uh,
Marjorie Cameron called Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome about the New Age, and she's, Babylon in
Very
his
much the
movie.
horror of Babylon then in that
But then she
regard.
was also the Whore of Babylon in the Jack Parsons L. Ron Hubbard ritual before that. So what I'm pointing out here is that
Ah, okay.
there's a current here. There are some threads that show that Margot Robbie was chosen for the Barbie role to represent the Whore of Babylon. That was already her archetype, and it connects her and the movie through Kenneth Anger to the sexual revolution, Satanism, and the mainstreaming of Thelema and the Thelemic goddess.
NGL, she got some cute feet though. I can see why they chose her to be the hoe of Babylon. Know what I'm saying?
Maybe I didn't look. I didn't look. I will say this though.
You
Um,
didn't look at her feet. They did a close up on her feet. What you tell me? You closed your eyes during that part? Come on, dog.
I
You
had
didn't
my
look at them
notebook.
toes
I had my
twinkling.
notebook out and I was taking notes, and I didn't know until after I watched it about how many
Nigga,
of
you
her.
got a notebook when you're watching movies?
You
Shit.
think I'm gonna watch? I'm
Taking
watching.
notes?
I was watching the Barbie movie with the express purpose of why is this movie, and not only that movie. If you paid attention this summer, they merged the two, Barbie and Oppenheimer. You see,
An
Barbieheimer,
Oppenheimer? Barbenheimer?
Barbieheimer.
Borbenheimer?
The significance of this though is,
Yes,
okay, so the nuke.
I'm familiar with the theory.
The nuke
Continue.
was also represented as Godzilla. Godzilla is a metaphor for the atomic bomb. Godzilla is the beast.
Have you seen the new Godzilla movie, though? Don't talk shit before you've seen the new one.
I've seen Godzilla minus one, and then I've seen the previous. But no, I didn't see the new one yet. What is it? Godzilla New Empire.
Oh, it was a banger.
Well,
Man,
hey,
that Ginger, what is that Ginger Kong doing? What are they trying to
hey, I
tell us about
appreciate the
red-headed
call,
giants?
but we have a couple other people trying to call in. Call back anytime.
Oh, no worries. I appreciate it, PS. Have a great day. Stay blessed.
Yep, will do. Yeah, Godzilla is the beast. Godzilla is the nuke, and so they had this Barbieheimer. It's Babylon and the Beast. And when you get into the symbolism between Babylon and the Beast, the color symbolism, Babylon red, scarlet. The Beast is symbolized by white. In this context, it's the merging of the two gives you the pink, which is symbolized in the tarot card Whore of Babylon, where she's holding a chalice, and in the Thoth tarot deck, if you look at the chalice, it is described as having pink on the interior, this elixir of life, and it has some deeper implications here. But my point being, they use the movies to introduce the gods to entrain us to worship these things, and it is worship. All right, phones are open 505 349 0420. Lord Laney says he was nuts but funny though. Yeah, great caller, first time caller. We always love our first time callers here. Infinite Plane Radio.
John the plumber.
Hey, John the plumber. You're not Toilet Bowl Earth, are you? Is that your alternate identity, or is that somebody else?
If you're on the inner ring of the bullseye, it spins clockwise. If you're in the outer ring, then it spins counterclockwise.
All right, all right. Anyway, loud ringer. Apologize for that. You rang it too loud. So,
Okay.
hey, have you seen the new Civil War movie?
I didn't see Civil War, but I did see the new Godzilla. I mean, I don't take any of those Godzilla movies seriously. It's like me and my son's thing. My dad took me to the movies all the time when I was a kid. Now that I'm a dad, I take my son once a month, once every couple months, we go see something. As far as Godzilla movies go, it wasn't bad.
Did you see Godzilla minus one?
The TV show, what, the Amazon TV show? No, I think what that was is I think like they franchised out Godzilla to America. So all these new movies that have come out in the last 10 years are the American version of Godzilla, the MonsterVerse. Minus one or whatever, 01, that's an actually Japanese
Yes, yes.
production,
It was
and I heard
really
it's
good.
super good,
It
but
is. It is. I
I
actually watched
haven't
it.
seen it.
At first I was like, is this the first movie I've seen that doesn't have a direct political parallel that isn't propaganda? And I watched it with that in mind, thinking, okay, this movie's pure. Then I realized, no, wait a minute. This movie is the counter to Barbie feminism because Barbie feminism ties into the idea of the destruction of the nuclear family, which is what she represents. And this also ties into Oppenheimer and the nuke, splitting of the atom. Splitting of the nuclear family is a theme. But in the Godzilla Minus One, it's the nuke torn Japan rebuilding, and the main character has to build back a family. He finds a baby, meets a woman, like, hey, let's form a
Oh my
family.
gosh,
And all the friends are like, hey,
what is
let's
this on?
Godzilla
Is this
minus
on Amazon?
it's in the theaters. You might find it on. I'm not sure if where you can find it now, but Godzilla Minus One is about reconstituting the nuclear family. It's the answer to Barbie
Okay,
feminism. So
cool.
Godzilla is a right
I'm all
wing.
about that.
Godzilla is a right wing culture warrior in that sense. But the
I
new
was like a 2000s. I was like a 2000s liberal. I mean, like at that time, everyone was just like, we don't have to be so strict. Let people have their own freedom. Let them live their lives. I said, okay, I don't care. Do what you want to do in 2000. So I guess I was kind of liberal, but I've like done like a 180 and I'm pretty traditional conservative just because I see all my friends that went like haywire and went bonkers. Like their lives went nowhere. Like either they ended up dead in prison or miserable. So that's the only reason why I promote traditional life, traditional living, I guess
but
families, moms, dads, all that good stuff.
right, well, that's admirable. I think we all want to hang on to what works, and that's what conservatism is supposed to mean. You hang on to what works. You don't just sacrifice for something. You don't get rid of what works in favor of something's new. But yeah, the traditional right versus progressive left thing is part of the info wars where I've stepped away from their main current things. It seems like they use outrage and moral panic as a way of maintaining their state of being agitated. And I'm looking back at it, this year I'm just taking a step back and I'm like, yep, they're almost solely motivated on the right by moral outrage about rapid changes in society. And I don't know if these rapid changes are actually as widespread as they present them to be. I kind of think that the world is far more boring than the news makes it seem.
Like my favorite movie franchises or TV franchises for like entertainment would be like The Walking Dead and Dune. Some people are like Star Trekkies or and Star Wars people. I'm like for me it's a tie with Dune and the Walking Dead universe. And I'm not much of a video gamer. I never have been. But I said, I'm bored. There's nothing on TV that I want to watch. There's nothing on Netflix. I've been hearing about this Fallout thing. I watched one or two episodes and like my jaw hit the floor. I was like, this is like another cool thing to watch. So I don't know what they're trying to tell us. It kind of scares me because if we've learned anything from predictive program, is it seems like we're 1 year out from whatever the hell they show on Amazon, Netflix this year is going to happen next year, right? Remember when the train got hit like a couple years ago? What was it called, Palestine?
Yeah,
And then
here's
a year
here's
later,
yes.
actually happened. So we're fucked. It means
Yeah.
like I don't believe in nukes, but they could fake nukes. They could still let off real bombs and kill a bunch of people. What the hell's going to happen next?
Well, look. Let's just say the best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior, and every past instance of predictive programming has predicted something fake. So I don't think that's going to change. There's no reason to worry about real bombs or it's ever going to go kinetic. It's not. But the predictive programming is hinting at EMP, a blackout preceding the new empire. So you just watch Godzilla X King Kong, the new empire,
Yeah,
EMP. Then the Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, EMP, Empire, and Frozen Nuclear Winter. A reoccurring theme, definitely. And I'm with you on Walking Dead. You can look at it as just a statement on society in various ways, predictive programming for quarantining, but I think there is something about a movie that's just on that gets down to the level of just survival and how people respond to pressure. There's a lot there. I think the series is very interesting. I liked it as well. In fact,
Yeah, they
I
keep coming out with new spin-offs every few years. Like it just started off with The Walking Dead, and then they had Fear the Walking Dead, and like I think they're on the third, fourth spin-off, and it's a pretty good thing. I mean, the zombies are the least interesting part of the show. You could like get rid of the zombies and just make it a plague without zombies, and everyone just dies. It's still an interesting show to see what happens to humanity when there's no technology, when there's nothing left, and people are fighting over scraps. One thing I find interesting is I don't think they use animals enough in The Walking Dead. I think like there's one or two characters that had a pet dog for like a few episodes. I would think if the world went to shit, a lot of people would have German shepherds and pit bulls and whatnot.
well, it's to me, I mean, ultimately at the end of it, I think that generations, decades, I mean, this zombie theme has been around for a long time, and it's a metaphor for a
Yeah.
lot of things. You know, collectivism, commies, a metaphor for the, of course, the infected, and possibly even. I mean, there are so many ways you can take it, but I think for the most part, the theme is repeatedly viruses and lockdowns. Like the first major one was I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, and that one was about a worldwide vampire-like plague. They were more like vampires than anything,
Yep.
but the theme was bats. Interestingly, bats. And I think that a lot of this stuff with zombies has all been to prepare us to fear the unveed, to get you to quarantine. I think it's about fear of the other.
Mm,
It's fear programming, and I think that's pretty much all because I don't think we're ever going to see The Walking Dead in real life.
that's too bad, man.
You know,
Because I got a katana sword, and I've just been waiting for that day. No, I'm just kidding.
no, look,
Hey, I want to say real quick.
well, a couple years
I
ago,
heard you.
well, go ahead, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I was just going to say ammo or popcorn. That's your choice. In 2020, I asked that question.
'Cause I split them. I mean, because I like shooting for fun, even if the world doesn't come to an end. I'm a veteran. You're a veteran. It's fun to shoot guns at paper targets. I hope I never have to shoot somebody in self-defense or a zombie apocalypse. But like, I gotta say honestly, like I was watching zombie movies in the '90s before The Walking Dead came out. I was watching like all the crazy zombie movies that came out before,
George
and
Romero.
it's just something I've always. George Romero movie. My dad took me to see Day of the Dead. You know what's funny enough is I live in Fort Myers. One of those zombie movies was filmed here, downtown Fort Myers, back in the '80s, and then just coincidentally, I moved here as a young adult. And they have a convention every Halloween where everyone dresses up as zombies. Some people dress up as soldiers to hunt the zombies down. It's just a fun little Halloween thing. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. But here's what I was gonna say: is I listened to your show a couple weeks. Was it last week or the week before, where you had the British guy on? You had a fakeologist and Lynn. Lynn was getting fired up at the end, started hollering. But I mean, I love it. I know. You know, we all care about each other. I don't think she was trying to be mean or anything. It's just sometimes people get emotional over whatever is going on in the world, and we just want to yell and scream. But I don't think she meant anything about it. But it was a very entertaining show.
Oh,
Good
yeah,
job.
well, look, the thing is that I understand where people are coming from. I don't take this stuff personally. And one thing I know for a fact here is that Lynn has always been a staunch opponent of the flat Earth as coming in to sabotage the truth community, destroy its credibility even further. And you can understand that perspective. So then I come along with this channel and I'm like, let's blow up flat Earth. And I get Mad Mike on board. And so we succeeded in our mission greatly between the rocket launch, the meme getting out there, the billboards. We accomplished the mission 100%. And from her perspective, we did a lot of damage. She was against that, so she hated Mad Mike. But it's like, you know what? He was a friend of ours, and he did exactly as we expected. So we have two different perspectives. She has the mainstream truther perspective, and we have what I consider to be more cutting fringe. But the point of it is, yeah, of course, we're not going to come to an agreement if your starting point is thou shalt not question NASA.
Man, you had a bunch of people calling up that night. They were haters, man. I was like, man, these cannot be fans of the show. Like we had like four people coming on the show talking shit. I was like, who the hell are these people? What are you calling in for?
Well, I was
Not
pointing
that
out
they
too.
ruined it or anything.
No, no, I was interested in it too. This guy's like, "Well, I've never heard of this guy, but I don't think you're right." I knew the person for 3 years straight. I did his biography. I was part of this entire enterprise, and then to just discount my perspective is just like very dismissive, but also indicative of something which I call low information disbelief. If you're a low information non-believer, we don't sit at the same table. We are informed non-believers. There's a world of difference, and so that kind of ignorant starting point needs to be demonstrated for what it is, so we can separate.
I think it's a good idea that you're making videos with video of yourself now. Just it's something new that you really haven't done much before. I'd seen you on camera years and years ago. The time where you did with Patricia Steer, I
Oh no,
watched that live when you did.
I was always
When
doing live video. The only reason I stopped was MGTV took control of my YouTube channel, and he would take my videos, upload them on a parody channel, change the context, and then have mine taken down. So I kind of lost the ability to even do live streams throughout the day wherever I am. But that has to be a bigger part moving forward as I begin this promotional tour for Autohoaxology 101.
I think it would protect your identity since you went through all that crap. I mean, like you went through a huge thing. That's why when I was getting mad when people were like suggesting that you were, I don't know, an agent or whatever. I was like, no way, dude. Tim's been through a bunch of shit. If he were in the CIA, if you, dude, you'd be like Tim Pool. You would have a huge channel. You'd be making millions of dollars. You'd have some fucking kick-ass
Maybe
compound.
I do.
But
Maybe
no,
look,
you're just like a regular.
maybe I have a one bedroom studio apartment, but then when nobody's looking, I get into my Bugatti and I head up to my mansion. But look, if
It's like three letter C.
but like I'm fine with people disagreeing and having their criticisms. I'm interested in understanding why they disagree, or if they even know why they disagree. Oh, Dave J called in, and Dave J is a cantankerous troll, and the only reason he gets on board is to trigger people and then call them out for raging. It's called reactive abuse. It's a troll tactic, and people fall for him all the time.
I smoked a blunt the other day. I was trying to like formulate some kind of like model for myself in my head that made sense. I was like, I know what it is. It's a Pokemon ball. Because I mean, I like the firmament, but I'm not dead set on the firmament. I was like, what if there's a firmament above and below? Damn, we're back in a ball, a glass ball. And if everything underneath us is like lava and fire, and everything above is like where we are on top of the, so it's like a disc in the middle of a ball, and underneath us is just like fire and lava, and everything above us is just like air and whatnot. I was like, fuck, we're like in a Pokeball? I don't know. I don't know what
Interesting.
this world is. It
No,
doesn't really matter.
I like Pac-Man Earth. I like Pac-Man Earth. Um,
Pac-Man.
have you heard this one? This is Ronnie and Johnny out there in Canada. They suggest
Canada?
that if you go to the edge of the world, you go far enough west, you automatically appear on the other side. So you get the impression it's a ball, but it's actually like
Okay.
the Pac-Man game. And that's what you arrive at when you assume that there isn't anything more than what they've shown us, and then you have to somehow comport that into a model. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't even believe in the Earth as an object.
No, there is no Earth.
I'm an Earth denialist. So try to get me riled up
Yeah.
about the Earth overheating. Like, no, I'm not even convinced that it exists.
It could be possible that space is real, and all that's still real. Science is still real, but we left Earth 10,000 years ago, and Jupiter is not a gas giant. We've been lied to. It's so big underneath there. There could just be like multiple crater Earths underneath this big pink hazy sky. Then it's like you get a combination of everything. You still get your universe, you still get planets, but you still have craters on this super ginormous planet that's like 300 times the size of Earth. Nobody knows where we are until they have space elevators or commercial space flight. We're never going to know where we are, but we know that they're lying to us. So we
But
know that they haven't given us the whole story.
so we know where we aren't, but we don't know where we are, and that's better than thinking that we know.
Exactly.
Better than accepting a false explanation. Anyway, hey, thanks for the call very much, John the
Take
plumber.
care, brother. God bless you, man.
See ya.
God bless you.
All right, second caller of Infinite Plane Saturday. Thank you, Osher, gifted 5 memberships to the Blue Wrench Lodge. Thank you. Welcome, Tony Driscoll, Upside Down Guy, Ryler05, Ice Grills, Roxy W. Travis Cloud, all now proud carriers of the blue wrench, abuse the power wisely. Obrecht says, oh, no, when I said Lynn says thou shalt not question NASA, what I mean is NASA criticism is fine, but NASA criticism by calling the Earth flat is not. And that flat Earth destroyed legitimate criticism about NASA. And I don't take the view that we should avoid those topics that discredit us in the eyes of the mainstream. It is we who should be saying the mainstream has been discredited. That's the appropriate position. But the problem now is, and this is something we've realized in the last few years, that Trutherville is even more discredited than Normieville. They're just as bad as Woketown. And we are right now spearheading a separation, breaking away. Bong Gripper says astronaut equals scuba diver. Yeah, you cannot be a scuba diver, I mean, an astronaut, unless you're a scuba diver. You have to actually get your license to scuba dive. And the spacewalks are largely filmed underwater, and they have scuba divers there in the tank who push them around because they don't have flippers on their spacesuits. There is no space station in orbit. Orbit doesn't exist. The space station's a terrible movie. We can debate as to whether it's real or not, but if you want, but I think the real question is, why are the special effects so terrible? Why can't they get the hair right? And I think I have the answer. It has to do with the limited pool from which they can draw talent to do these movie productions. They have to limit the number of people who know it's fake, which means that there's a lot of talented people who just aren't getting in on the business. Matt X says Les Luthor put War Hoax on the map. Yeah, he and John LeBon. I heard it first from John LeBon, but Les Luthor put boots on the ground and exposed what I consider to be a great advance in autohoaxology and skepticism, which is the concept of illusion warfare. We're not calling it a psyop because it's more than just what's on TV, and they use the term psyop. It's not just a hoax. A hoax implies somebody fooled the news. No, the news is the hoaxer. Illusion warfare brings in the immersive nature of the illusion, where the illusion is presented through a combination of what's on TV, what the politicians are saying, and the props. The props being the costumes, the mask that you wear, the things that get you involved in it that make it real. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yeah, hey there, Tim. Just checking in. I've been following the channel, reading the books. You've been spot on with the bifurcated side mind war, as you call it, the dialectic that we have here. And just pointing a couple things out, if I could, I've noticed this is between masculine and feminine. I think you've touched on this somewhat before.
Sure, and I appreciate
Uh,
you
yeah,
reading the books and everything. Glad to hear, and I'm glad that you see value in looking at this thing as what it is, a bifurcated mind war, dialectical mind games. But yeah, about the masculine and feminine, please.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's I would say it's because we've got two hemispheres within our brain, right? This may be something Young has talked about. I know there's plenty of neuroscience. Ian McGilchrist is a good um, neuroscientist to look at, but these ancient societies called one or the other. Like we've got a masculine, logical, more creative, intuitive, feminine, but we see it both on the microcosmic and macrocosmic scale. I've noticed. So we've got it inter-societally. There's this bifurcated division more and more so between men and women. You can show, but also it's part of the political theater. It's part of we've got maybe you're more nanny state Democrat, say you're overprotective father Republican. Um, but where I was going with this too is it's the religious paradigm that we have here. So the new religion, um, the mainstream media, the mind war has gone on for a long time between the old world order, the Roman Empire, as far as now too. Um,
Yeah, the
so we
it's a continuation, is what I'm definitely seeing here, and it does exist on all levels. I think that the things we fight over reflect this, and that's why it's so split down the middle. It's like, well, look, left feminism, right toxic masculinity, right phallic guns active, and they're worried about the guns being grabbed. Left female feminine, and they accept they're pro vax, which is passive recipients, and of course they're worried about their wombs being regulated. So by the other side, so one side's trying to regulate the other side, guns and wombs, guns versus needles. They split this thing down in a way that it will never be reconciled. And then you have, like you just mentioned, the traditional as opposed to the progressive. One looking back, one looking forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so between this schism we have here, we've got some on a more materialistic view, all is the body, all is just here and now. More than the other side is a more spiritual view. This world doesn't matter. Everything is passing away. We've got this too. And my contention would be the occult, the esoteric, the old mystery traditions are what really bridges this science and spirituality together. Because, yes, we can deconstruct religion as being erroneous, or your traditional orthodoxies as being flawed, as being Caesar's Messiah again. This was Christianity was given to the Wars of the Jews. That's a whole other thing. War of the Jews in the first century, when Christianity was basically given to pacify the Jewish armies back then. Long story there, but uh, where I was going with that though is we can deconstruct religion, but society should understand the objective morality. That morality is objective to some degree. So we can give credit to things like the golden rule: do no harm, don't do unto others what you wouldn't have done. But we continue to vote to regulate each other's lives, to take away freedoms and whatnot. So I like where you're going with finding those of us that are getting off of the sinking
Yes.
ship.
Yeah, go think
But
about
I
it.
think we
If
should.
if each side is like trying to restrict the other side, and both sides and on the political horseshoe, the fringes are fighting over the masses in the middle. Nobody's looking for the exit. Nobody's operating from outside of the closed system. So I think, yeah, we need to aggregate those of us who are operating from outside their system, which means a more expanded frame of reference.
Absolutely. And question I was going to ask, because I've admired your stoicism and what is it, ataraxia amongst the whole thing. And now, what do you suppose is the worst case scenario? Is there a worst case scenario if humanity continues along
Um,
this current
right.
trajectory?
Well, taking the MSM minus perspective, because of course the worst case scenario from the Trutherville is all these nightmarish things. Deep state, demons, aliens, um, planet killing asteroids, like the world literally ending at the eclipse. That's MSM plus. They add on a bunch of stuff to what we experience. If you're leaning towards woke, it's like climate change, climate catastrophe, and fascist takeovers. You have these worst case scenarios that are nightmarish that people who are activists and truthers embrace. So for them, it's more urgent. And I think that the worst case scenario is a way of providing a neo eschatology, a new end times with a secular explanation, or even scientific. So my perspective is the MSM minus. If I subtract all the things I know not to exist that frame our world, that constrain it, whether it be nukes or various doomsday scenarios, I find that there isn't really a worst case scenario other than the possibility of being bored. Like, I really think it's that good bad. I mean, however you want to define it, this brave new world. When you subtract this stuff, if you unplug from the mind war, ataraxia, peace of mind, is achievable, but it's so foreign that the idea of just having peace of mind is offensive to some people. Some people mock me and they're like, you're not agitated enough. You have a false sense of security. It's going to go kinetic and you're just going to be eating popcorn. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be eating popcorn, but it's not going kinetic. So, worst case scenario, though there is one, is the power elite increase the disparity between knowers and believers, and we get increasingly immersed in illusion. and lose touch with with the real world. And perhaps we get farmed into enclosed cities. They rewild the world, and now it's a human zoo with elite zookeepers.
Sure,
But no,
sure.
that's the
Do
worst I can imagine.
you give any credence or belief that you may see a transhumanist or a merging with machines soon? Is there any threat of that or concern to you?
I think that that's part of the, like, the traditional values has their own concepts of salvation, and I think the progressive left has been sold a bill of goods that transcendence is going to occur through the singularity, through science and technology, and merging with machines. I think that's mostly a false idealism, and the person who coined the term singularity, as far as the technological singularity, is John von Neumann, like new man, perfect world stage name. So I think it's another false utopian scheme that if we follow science and its path to salvation, we can transcend this world and become like aliens or something in the future. Whereas the traditional value, the right, sees technology with a lot of fear and trepidation. I hear a lot of technophobia on the right, and I think that's part of the dialectic. Right fears progress and technology, wants to go back to the farms and the old ways, and the left wants pure technology, embrace the aliens, let's become cyborgs.
Good point. Good point. Okay, so no real worst case perhaps besides boredom.
Besides boredom or a loss, and it's a personal loss to live your life in the metaverse without understanding the purpose of your life. Yeah, I think that's the worst case scenario. I don't think there's any kind of engineered depopulation or doom, and I think if it was possible, they would have done it by now. But I think it's theater of mind war, and I don't know how far back this thing goes, but I don't think it ends.
Right, right. And this earth shape, I like the word earth shape agnostic because this also seems to be one of the biggest schisms or bifurcations in the so-called truth, or maybe there's a dialectic between Trutherville and Otto Hoaxville. I'm not so sure. I know exactly where I land, but there certainly are questions to be had and answered. For example, so East Coast here, the sun will be setting at 8:12 our time, Mountain Time 6:12. You will still be seeing the sun. You will see the sun for a good hour or two longer than I will. How would you explain that? Is there an answer for that? If not, globe Earth. I haven't found one personally.
The only explanation would be the assumption of a sun being local, as far as like, okay, if our base assumption is that it's 93 million miles away, then that raises all kinds of improbabilities. Like the whole Earth would be lit at the same time. And it also assumes that sunlight can travel 93 million miles. Like the assumption of light traveling these distances is built into this model. But if we subtract all those assumptions and we eliminate the curve, then space has to be conceived of something only up, not below us, and of course out there to some extent, but also the locality of the luminaries, the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, etc., would mean that them being occulted from our view would might one be a function of distance, but also how far does light actually travel, which I think is a valid question if we're asserting a flat plane with local luminaries.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like the maybe I'll adopt that myself or shape agnostic. I like it, but I can see that every good lie, I would say, has elements of truth. I think that's something to remember because I can not believe NASA, but also contend that globe shape makes the most sense mathematically, personally, and I'm open to being wrong.
Well,
Maybe we are
yeah,
some infinite.
it doesn't begin with NASA. There's this misconception that NASA is somehow the fount of all the that wouldn't be the case. But there are some other things I'm looking back into. For example, John Dee, who coined the term British Empire, and Gerardus Mercator, the Mercator projection, they had a friendship and correspondences, and you can read their letters they wrote to each other. But interestingly, John Dee and Mercator had this letter where they talked about the North Pole having a black magnetic rock island in the middle with a 33-mile circumference. And they describe this thing in this letter, and I thought that's kind of unusual because Mercator is a person out of reality and someone from history, as is John Dee. Why would they have this really, fantastical little thing here? And then you look into John Dee, and his worldview, even though he may have accepted the Copernican revolution in his private esoteric meanderings, he seemed to approach this place as some kind of a simulation that was, um, I guess, affected by the magician's will, and he described the world as square, as a plane with 30 or so layers or dimensions, as he described them, planes. So planes of existence. We hear astral plane. Nobody talks about astral sphere. In the occult realm and these magical philosophies, it's always the celestial plane. So what I'm suggesting is that he may privately, have had a different opinion, and it may be that if the globe is a containment model for humans, for human minds, for our imaginations, for our bodies, if it's a false model, that it would have been designed to be such, and that maybe this is a way of subverting a new enlightenment and subverting science itself. People are liberating from a dark age. They're approaching science and scientific methodologies. So you get in front of it and you answer the big question right away. Everything's been discovered, nothing else to see. We're in a closed system. So what I'm saying is, it could be that the mathematics have all been bent. And one thing about John Dee is he was a magician who believed in, of course, bending reality. And magicians, court magicians, astrologer, these things have always been connected. So it is interesting too that he had his study of the stars, but if you look at his own writings, it's just a question of, well, what did he think those were, and how far did he think they were? But yeah, it's an interesting question, and for me, again, I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to whatever answers are there. I just want the truth. And I'm also open to maybe it is a
Fascinating.
ball, but maybe they're just hiding continents or something.
This Magellan map, if you're familiar, has been a fascinating find as well. If I'm saying that right, does that ring a bell? That Magellan map, I believe he was from Spain. He had this map of all the hidden land, things like Garden of Eden and land like Thoth is on there. Are you familiar with this at all?
I haven't seen that one.
No.
I'll look into
No.
it though. I like all these old maps. What's that one? Have you seen the Fool's Cap map of the world? Very
Fool's
intriguing
Cap.
map.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll bring it up here. It has an unknown maker, but it's basically this uh, jester hat with the face of the globe, like where its face is, which is kind of funny, and I think it's maybe unintentionally ironic if the globe is in fact some kind of a device to fool the world or to create a false world. But again, I think it's fascinating to consider the
Interesting.
discrepancy between John Dee and his the Copernican revolution, what he thought about the Earth, and then of course his relationship to Mercator, and then his private perspectives.
Gonna have to look into that. It does sound very neat. Interesting.
But again, I'm
Well,
like,
great.
look, our agnosticism is only valid for so long. There has to be a point where those who are asserting shape agnosticism have to make some good faith effort to gain more information to prove our theory wrong or to prove the other one correct. So there has to be some kind of action. So it's not a position I plan to rest on for the rest of my life.
Sure. And is it even important? And we can talk about the shape, but as far as we know, it's prison shaped. It's has our brain in a box shape. It's
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
got us fighting over these sort of things. And
Well,
but
yeah.
great show, Tim. Look forward to the the news next month and see how that goes.
Oh,
Great
yes.
story you have in the works. It sounds like.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be interesting mid-month. Well, I appreciate the call very much. Thanks for the comments and questions, and call back anytime.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Infinite Plane Saturnday 4/27/2024. Yeah, the question of the world, again, like the caller suggested, false debate, flat or round. The real question is open or closed. How we see the world, how you came to arrive at that, and were you falsely rushed to a conclusion that you cannot test or verify? And if so, did it kill your curiosity? as to what might be behind the false explanation. And that's what I want to know. I look at the globe, I look at our scientific paradigm as a false model. Internal, and it's a, our internally agreed upon mass delusion is obviously built on lies, psyops, lies, etc. But the physical world exists. It's not just a mental construct. The mental construct doesn't match the territory. The map is not the territory. But the question here is, what is the territory from its, from the big question, from the furthest perspective? Is it a ball? Well, the solar system's flat, the universe is flat, galaxies are flat, conservation of angular momentum. Does it even matter? Well, I'm suggesting here that it's would be on brand for the power elite to lie about geography the same way they lie about history. So maybe the world is 25% larger than they say. Maybe they fudged the math a little bit. Or maybe the uncharted waters of the world are actually charted. Maybe we're not in the good spot. Maybe we're in some kind of quarantine, and just like the movie The Village, perhaps we're a few centuries retrograde. Like the elite might be ruling from some Elysium, some paradise that looks like a, a science fiction, idealized futuristic world, and we're just kind of down here. Kevin Mooring says, "Did you see Rogan pressed on the moon landings? Did not." People expect too much out of Rogan. He's never been an exponent for, quote, truth. He's always entertained these ideas with kind of a sneer, kind of mocking his friend Alex Jones, but always there to gatekeep. E4 Rockin says, "Existence is momentary at best, and trying to effect change in a monolithic way. Sight of such a small presence is lost in an infinite cycle of redundancy." Catching up on comments to see what I've missed here. I think somebody told me to stop calling Barbie the Whore of Babylon, and I'm only describing it accurately. This isn't ad hominem. I like the movie. The fact of it is, Margot Robbie played a number of very significant roles, which brought about this characterization where she's the perfect avatar for the new age goddess who they call Babylon. Babylon corresponds to the beast. And I've done a number of articles breaking down the various ways that they built up this character and how it was portrayed and the meaning of Barbie Land and Barbie entering America through California, bringing Barbie Land to the real world. That was Babylon. And it's all a reference to Marjorie Cameron and the Babylon working and the New Age goddess being introduced. That's why she was introduced as a monolith in a scene based on 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's why she commands the children, the girls, to bash the heads of their dolls against the rocks because they're sacrificing motherhood for independence in Barbie Land with their neutered Ken doll boyfriends. Pure materialism, just destruction of the nuclear family. This is paradigm shifting iconography. And this is an idol. It's quite literally idol worship. And the fact that she became a real woman. Now, I talked about the symbol of the Holy Grail. And without getting explicit, the mystery schools are describing what we would call fertility rites and spiritualized interpretations or esoteric interpretations of the sex act. And it gets pretty deep into the weeds with the OTO. But in this paradigm, the priestess is the incarnate of the goddess, and they call her Babylon. And the significance here, of course, is in this new paradigm, Babylon replaces the virginal goddess. It's a completely new concept of femininity. And moreover, the tearing down of the god, the masculine. That's why you have the Ken doll, who remains a doll at the end of the movie. He's just a nub. Whereas at the last word spoken in Barbie is gynecologist. She asks to see one because now she has one. Now, this is all correlated with her role as Pandora, as Babylon, as Barbieland breaks out into the world, and the men in the self described phallic Mattel building have to try to get her back in the box. The movie has multiple layers, but the quote membrane, the barrier, between Barbie Land and the real world is a portal. And the portal is called, in the Babylon working with Parsons and Cameron and Hubbard, a Stargate. There's an esoteric aspect to it that is obviously not meant for the masses, but it is just high level Satanism. You can't separate Margot Robbie from this archetype and from the sexual revolution. It goes right back to her role in Babylon, which is based on Hollywood Babylon. Again, Kenneth Anger, Mickey Mouseketeer, co-founder of the Church of Satan, the Lemite, since the age of 12, and you can find pictures of this guy hanging out with Alfred Kinsey. Alfred Kinsey goes down to Aleister Crowley's sex dungeon to figure out what they were doing to add to his quote research. Yeah, they were externalizing this stuff. And it goes even deeper when you study the symbolism of pink. And Jane Mansfield was on the cover of the original movie, the original Hollywood Babylon, Jane Mansfield. That's who is on the cover of that. So significantly, Jane Mansfield was a high priestess in the Church of Satan, and she lived in a pink house, and she wore pink. She was like a living Barbie doll. It's because the Barbie doll is the Babylon to the beast, represented in that context Anton LaVey. The beast, of course, beast and Babylon, priest and priestess, scarlet red, the priest white. We saw this in the Super Bowl. I call it the Super Babylon fertility rites. You had Rihanna come down in the red dress, pregnant, belly showing, embodying the goddess. Then you had the dancers, all men, all in white, looked like PPE. So all the males in white, female in red. Then in this more recent Super Bowl, you had the halftime show, Alicia Keys, same costume, red dress. Then you had the performer Usher in white with the phoenix symbol, which is also very significant here. But the red and the white creates the pink. It's Babylon and the Beast, Christ and Magdalene. This is ritual magic, it's idol worship, and it's mainstream. So what I'm saying is that they definitely introduced the new goddess in a big way with Barbie. Max X says Ryan Gosling goes from alpha male in Drive to beta in Barbie. Yes. And this is programming. It's just strictly programming. And I'm not even reaching, I'm just barely scratching the surface, in fact. Margot Robbie's previous roles all lend a part in this. Anufel says there's an episode in South Park where the aliens put the globe inside a cube because humanity stole the fake alien money. Well, I'm with John D. Earth is a plane with many, many layers to it, and it can respond to the human will when properly attuned and focused. I mean, the guy was a magician, the original 007 plus astrologer, and I've looked into his system, what they call Enochian magic, and one of his magical implements was an iPhone. It was a black scrying mirror, but apparently to communicate with this other realm, you have to have a black mirror. So it's kind of convenient that we all have one in our pockets. We says, as long as they can keep the sexes divided, just another hate fear. Well, they're getting rid of the gender binary is gone. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey,
Yeah,
what's up?
hello.
Hey, caller, what topic has piqued your interest today?
I'm just interested in everything you're saying. I'm just I'm curious because you went on a rant about like what gods people believe in and stuff. I'm just asking you why is any of this bad?
I'm not saying it's
Why
bad,
are why,
but it's
why
it's
are psyops bad? Why is predictive programming bad? What's the point?
you could say it's bad, or you could look at it as simply mind entrainment and programming. And it's
Okay,
not,
but why is that good or bad?
it's good if you believe that world peace is contingent upon us having a harmonious worldview.
But what do you believe? That's what I'm asking. What do you believe? Do you think that's good or bad?
I think it's bad from the perspective of psychosomatics, stress, irrational fears, hyperstition, superstition. It inculcates bigotries and division. So in that sense, it's a hate monger, and it's the source of internal war. So as
But why is that bad though?
why is internal war worse than internal peace? Why is happiness better than misery?
Yeah, why is that? No, no. Why is that bad though? Explain it to me.
Because if our standard of value is that which is better than that which is not,
Who established that?
I think if we accept survival as a positive value, then anything that works against that, we can kind of say is
But what if my psyops determine my survival? Is that not a good thing?
not all survival is equal. Not all existences, not
Oh,
all.
but who determines that?
Well, I think we can make pretty clear statements. Like, for example, a person who is living in an artificially induced place of ignorance, fear, and superstition is living a less than their best life. And I think that
Who
if
determines that though?
it's up to us individually, I believe it's our responsibility to achieve our best. But to say that there are better ways of living than others, that there are judgments that can be made, yeah, that's not a stretch. I mean, I think you would
I mean,
agree
you're
with.
you're saying a lot of things that we're supposed to take for granted as what's good and what's bad. This is what I'm just don't understanding. Where are you deriving your value system from?
Where am I deriving my value system from? You mean,
Yeah.
why am I questioning the premise that survival for its own
No, no,
sake
no.
is
I'm
good?
not talking about questioning the premise. I'm asking you where you get your value system from.
My mind, I think. Anyway, have a great
So
evening.
just
Yeah, I think, I reason, I conclude. That's it. It's not that difficult. And the caller is here, on his couch, laying back with his phone, making calls. He made the judgment that it is better to be. He judged that it's better to be on his couch than outside doing work, pulling weeds. Infinite Plane
I'm
Radio.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
you.
sorry. I think the call dropped. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We just. So anyway, let's continue. Somebody had suggested that you might have been a troll, but I don't think you're a
I'm
troll.
not. I'm not a troll. I'm really just asking you where does this all go? Where exactly is your foundation?
Well, let me ask
Honestly,
you,
where does
why
where
why
does
are
all this come from? Where does
why
your end goal?
yeah, let me ask you, why are you on the internet striving for some kind of intellectual edification instead of working at a homeless shelter feeding people? What makes hedonism.
I could ask you the same thing.
No,
What does it
I'm asking
matter?
you, what makes pleasure better than pain for you? Why are you seeking pleasure right now? You're not putting yourself through any kind of hardship.
That question makes no sense. What exactly is your
Out of
point?
all the things in the
Why
world
don't
you
you
can do,
just get to your point
my point is,
instead
why
of
why are you
instead of
choosing
asking?
why are you choosing to entertain yourself mindlessly instead of doing some good for the world?
How
Because
is
you
this mindless? I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. This is the
clearly
human experience,
clearly you're
and
indulging
I'm
in.
trying to understand where do you get this idea? Because from what I'm
You're
understanding,
having a hedonistic, pleasurable, calm, peaceful Saturday afternoon, enjoying yourself on the phone. That's what you're doing because you decided it's better to have fun and enjoy your life than not. You made that decision.
oh, well, we all have arbitrary things that we do that we derive pleasure from. Like you, for example, you derive pleasure from, solving predictive programming and the fake reality. So what's the difference? What's your point?
What's my point?
What exactly makes your venture better than mine? Exactly. Where's your value system at?
What makes it better than yours? I couldn't
Yeah,
say. Like,
that's
look, look,
exactly
look,
what
look. There
that's
are look.
exactly what my
Oh,
first fucking questions were to you
okay,
from
chill.
the jump was
Let me answer. Let me answer. There are
good.
people doubled over on Mentanol, zoned out on street corners, and I'm sure they're having the time of their
Okay,
lives. They're high. Now, I could
okay.
argue that from the perspective of surviving as an organism and having the most out of your life, that is not optimal because they're vulnerable to all sorts of things, including death and derangement. So I think that from the perspective of superiority, yeah, a cleaner lifestyle is obviously superior to that. That's not even a question. The fact that you're questioning it is questionable.
All right. Let me. I don't know what was even supposed to. have any relevance to what we're talking about.
Well, because you're
But
saying that nothing's better than anything else. What makes this better than what you're doing? Well, what makes what we're doing better than what the
that's not
Fentanyl
what I
heads are
said
doing?
at all. I don't
Okay,
know
well, you're
where
having
you
a
got
hard.
that
I don't
from.
know what you're asking then. Ask your question and don't interrupt the answer. It's simple.
I'm asking you where you're deriving your value systems
I
from.
told you,
Where
I
what
think, my mind. I have an
you
intellect.
think so arbitrary.
No, 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 not arbitrary. I
So
think
maybe so. What's the difference between you thinking and what I think, or what you think and what the
I have
quote unquote
parameters.
elites
I have
think? What's the
parameters.
difference?
I have
What's the
parameters.
difference? Who's the arbiter between you and the elites and what you think is good and bad?
Objectivity, logic, reason,
Okay, so
objectivity,
who
truth.
determines objectivity?
What is versus what isn't.
What is? You keep saying that. You're just saying what is what is. It's like saying common sense is common sense. That doesn't mean
Is the
anything.
sky blue or not?
Okay, so factual observations are different than value judgments and ethics and
No, no, no,
morality.
no, no. We're there.
That's
There
different.
is an objective reality. I think we can
Okay,
start with that as an agree.
when I can observe something is there, that's different from a moral fucking claim than what's good and what's bad.
No, I think we
Do you
all.
understand
No,
the
no, no,
difference
no. We
between
no.
those two?
You already agree that pleasure is better than pain by what you're doing right now.
I never said that.
Yes, you did.
You said
You
that,
are
sir.
living. Look, your
Don't
behaviors.
apply your standards
Your
to me.
behaviors.
I never agreed to
Your
that.
behaviors demonstrate that you're putting pleasure and entertainment above
My behavior? What behavior
sitting
exactly?
on your couch talking to some guy on the internet. Purely academic
You're
speculation,
you're in
conjecture.
the same boat, my friend. What's the difference?
I'm enjoying my life and I'm doing this intentionally, and you're pretending like this is somehow.
And I'm not enjoying my life. I'm not here just talk. Are we not having a mutual share of time
I
here
don't think so. I
and
don't think so.
experience?
Look, one commenter says you're a crybaby, another says you're unbearable, another says blah blah
Okay, so
blah.
now no argument ad populum. Okay,
No,
just
no, no,
appeal to
wrong.
the
No, no,
peanut
no. That
gallery
was ad.
for help.
That
Is
was
that what we're
that.
doing,
No,
IPS?
no. That was ad hominem. But no, that's not what we're doing. You're being belligerent, and you're ignoring the point that I made that you are choosing to enjoy your life lazily on your couch because you think pain and idle amusement is better than getting into.
I don't care about your storytelling. That has nothing to do with that.
Okay,
I
well
don't care about
you're
your
kind of
psychological.
irritable. I don't know what I can recommend for you, but thanks for the call. Caller's very irritable, irate, and I think he. Okay, caller, have you managed
Yeah,
to get?
dude.
Have you managed to gain
Why are
control?
you
Let
why do
me
you keep fucking
here's
hanging up on me?
let me bring up one thing. My assessment of the world prevents me from being high strung and emotional. I'm in control of my emotions, you're not. And I would posit that being in control of one's emotions is better than not
No,
being.
you just hung up on me.
No,
How is that you were in control of your emotions?
you're not in control of your emotions.
You just hung up on me. That's not in control of your emotions. That's low impulse, sir.
You have no impulse control, you're ragey and you can't contain yourself. You can't even.
Nobody is raging. I'm literally just talking words to
No,
you
you're talking. That's
over
no
a
one.
phone.
You're being dishonest and you're talking over me. That's actually considered to be an
Oh,
aggressive,
I'm
irate.
sorry I talked over you.
You can't
Continue what you
control
got
it.
to say.
You can't control it, though, is what I'm saying. Your emotions won't let you control yourself.
Okay, again, more psychological
That's
reporting.
why you called back five
Nobody
times in
cares
a
about
row.
that.
Well, look,
Nobody cares
I'm
about
not your
that.
therapist. I appreciate the call. Okay, hopefully he can find inner peace, or if he doesn't want that. Okay, look, I'm gonna not take this person's call for obvious reasons. Not a good faith caller. Not a problem. Next caller, please. Infinite Plane
Yeah.
Radio. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Very, very good. Just hanging out here. Infinite Plane Saturday, open phones, covering a lot of ground. Any topic in particular?
No, not really. This is Mango. So I'm just here to say hey. I just want to get that caller off the phone.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, we needed that kind of
No problem,
a
man.
palate
It's good to
cleanser.
have better callers
Oh yeah, it's good to have
than
callers, and
irritating people like that.
I don't think he was making any kind of real points. He's like, how do you say what's better than what's not better? And it's like your actions. Forget what I'm saying. What are your actions conveying?
Exactly.
And if you're sitting back on your couch
Exactly.
enjoying a phone call, even if you're mad about it, that is a form of entertainment. You're choosing that instead of doing something like something painful or something that might entail hard work or self-sacrifice. So that person has already said that in his view, it is better to be like this than like that. So I just go by people's actions, and the fact that he's
Yeah,
triggered speaks volumes.
it's yeah, totally wrong to be acting like that. He was very rude, mean, and he just kept asking you why, and he was belligerent. Sounded like he was liquored up, if anything.
Could have been, could have been. And when they ignore your answer and then they change it, it's because they're trying to throw you off, and he may have been calling in just to throw me off for some reason. Who knows? I mean, I'm not worried
Yeah,
about
I
it.
think a lot of these guys they just want to call and give you hell or give you a hard time just to waste your time.
Well,
It's not good, you know.
before this, I was doing retention for DirecTV, and I can take angry people who are mad about their money being taken, and I can pitch them on mindless propaganda and make them happy by the end of the call. So hopefully the guy's going to sign up for a year membership.
I hear you. I used to work for the fraud department in the credit card company, and it was fun. Although after 8 months, I did have a tendency to speak my own mind. They want you to follow a script, and that I really didn't go for it. So yeah, they fired me after eight
Yeah.
months of good work, but it was fun. I spoke to the guy that played Ferris Bueller. That's the only real cool call that I got to talk to.
Oh, Ferris
What was
Bueller.
his
Yes,
name?
yes.
Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, to unlock his card, he's trying to hook his wife up. Then who was it? Who was he married to then? The
The
girl
girl from
from.
Sex and the City.
Yep. Yeah, I did ask how she was, and I did compliment him on his movie, and I unlocked his card. So there you go.
I like the job. I would get in trouble for talking to customers off topic, but I like
Oh yeah.
telemarketing. I like the whole customer retention and sales because all the coworkers are talkative, and I just it was the least boring work I've ever had.
I understand. I tried sales, and I was never good at it because I was kind of lying to the person on the phone. I didn't go along with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation, and it's pretty interesting how it's social engineering and phishing, and it's a skill that you develop,
Yeah.
and it served me. I mean, I've used phishing and social engineering techniques to great effect. That's how I doxed Q, in fact.
Well, good. I'm glad you're getting to where you are now. You're obviously making a very big impact, and just more power to you.
Yeah, I appreciate
You
the
know.
call, and I want to get more, obviously, more people involved, more callers, because we have some great researchers looking at all over the place, and we aggregate the intel here and
Good.
discuss it, and I think there's
Good.
nothing but good times ahead. But I appreciate your call very much, and Mango
Yeah.
Penguins, call back
No
anytime.
problem. I'll be looking forward to meeting you when I'm back in town. Okay. I'll hit you up.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I look forward to it.
Okay.
Okay, talk to you later.
All right. Be safe, buddy.
Now that would be great. Like if you're in New Mexico, IPS headquarters is here in the Heights, and my address is public. We have a conference room, and we're going to be using the headquarters here as ground zero for the auto hoax revolution. This is a form of accelerationism in the truther land, but this is definitely ground zero. Mark N. Foley says that last dude is obsessed with you, Tim. Yeah, you know what? I don't know how long this person has been listening, or if it's a first time. We've received calls from all over the place. Sometimes they seem like they're feds, sometimes they're shills, sometimes they're just unhinged. I don't know what would have unhinged that person, but I rarely have to block people. Let's continue though. We barely scratched the notes, which is not a bad thing. This is Infinite Plane Saturday. I'd just like to catch up on the previous week. It's been an interesting month. Started off with the Burning Man 419. That's kind of where we're focused at the moment, awaiting the EMP, which may never come. Maybe just more doom hopium. Ryan Garcia, who claims he was raped at a mass satanic ritual by Power Elite at the Bohemian Grove. and then he did a boxing match and made a lot of money because suddenly everybody knew who he was. He's back at it, and he's predicting an earthquake for June 6th.
I have predicted that there will be earthquake June 6th.
June 6th?
June
Any
6th.
specific location or just
LA and Vegas.
on June 6th?
On
earthquake?
June 6th of 2024. All right, that's what I'm going to leave it with.
June 6th. He's just going to leave it at that. And we should listen to him because he's a boxer. If you're MMA or you're a boxer, we need to listen to you about the world, the shape of the world, and the evil that runs the place. And let me point this out because the caller before the last couple callers, we were talking about the bifurcated nature of the mind war and how it's left and right. The reason why you have right wingers with conspiracy theories, which is the anti to the mainstream media, the reason why you have MMA and boxers constantly putting this stuff out there is because they want to associate conspiracy theories with the right and the paragons of toxic masculinity. And that would be, of course, the right-wing podcastosphere and, of course, specifically the fighters who represent this. And it's consistent. Look at all the MMA fighters and note what they talk about. This has been a consistent pattern. We see it with comedians as well, I've noticed. Oftentimes there's certain comedians they use to carry these political footballs on that side of the spectrum. But this is obviously just an individual who's been given lines to read, and it works. Got millions and millions of dollars into his hands that he wouldn't have received because nobody would have heard about him if he didn't make up stories about Me Too at the Bohemian Grove. Jake the A-Hole says he saw some stuff at the Bohemian Grove, therefore he knows about when the future earthquakes will occur. Yeah, it's like he's an eyewitness to some horrible atrocities, and yet he's not telling anybody's names. It's like, who was it? Was it Tucker Carlson? Was Andrew Tate there? Who was it? Aries 1 says, why do Zoomers and Alphas all talk like they're multi-platinum rappers? Good question. Zoomers and Alphas. Dinah South says, when the false prophet is wrong, they would be put to death in the Bible. God. You know how much cleaner X would be if we could implement that? You get one wrong. You make one guess, you put all of your credibility on it. If the Super Bowl doesn't get nuked, you're out of here. There are so many people, and I block them on my Twitter account. But yeah, I kind of wish we could do away with a lot of these prophets when they're proven to be wrong and they're not able to correct themselves. I know I talked to that one prophet who said JFK was coming back to save us, that Donald Trump was going to unzip his face, it's just a mask, and JFK's beneath it, and the deep state's going to get it, and we're all going to win, and Nasara, Jasara, you get all kinds of money, all your bills are paid, med beds, reverse aging, we live forever. Everything was supposed to happen, I think it was last August, and it didn't happen. And then the Super Bowl was supposed to get it. Didn't happen. Then the eclipse, the moon was going to fall. Didn't happen. And I looked at these individuals and I'm like, okay, what are you prophesizing next? And it's like they don't even own up to why they got it wrong. Jake the A-Hole says he was graped by the elites. Maybe they gave him details of future earthquakes while they were graping him. Right. The thing is, it's so stupid. I'm sorry. This is stupid. What we're seeing here is Ryan Garcia being interviewed and nobody saying, okay, you just bullshat the world with Bohemian Grove. You went deeper than Alex Jones. You piled it on way deeper and you didn't own up to it. And here they are. This is like one of these right-wing news outlets and they're listening to him like, oh, okay. You must know something because you've been hit in the head so many times. Like, what is the basis for treating this guy like he can see the future? And if you know something, tell us where, so I can at least tell my friends. Or if it's Seattle, we can not tell them. Let's play this again so you can listen to this modern-day prophet.
I have predicted that there will be earthquake June 6th.
June 6th?
June
Any
6th.
specific location or just
LA and Vegas.
Okay.
on June 6th?
Okay, LA and Vegas, June 6th. Okay, there we go.
On June 6th of 2024. All right, that's what I'm going to leave it with.
There you have it.
Everybody get the hell out of Los Angeles. Everybody if you're watching this, run, bitches. Y'all better, because this dude's...
Okay, that guy over there is likely not going to survive the interview. The guy wheezing over there, he's not going to make it to the earthquake. Yeah, June 6th, LA and Vegas. No, 6/11 is the date. Nicotramus correctly cites. According to JL26, who is a reputable, I wouldn't say prophet, he is a Metascript decoder. He has picked up on some threads. He's a noticer of patterns, and I appreciate many of his insights. However, he has made a pretty firm prediction for 6/11. Seattle's going to get the nuke, and if it doesn't happen, it can't happen next year. So it has to happen this year, or something else. I can't even. We have to make it this year. Seattle gets nuked on 6/11, and Trump gets a head wound as a birthday present to Barack Obama on 8/4. If it doesn't happen this year, I can't hold out for next year. I'm just giving up on it. But I am in with 6/11 being highly significant as the inverse of 9/11, and a date 6/11 and the number 611 and 11/6 being heavily associated with domestic violent terror. It's a very consistent theme. Nicotramus says JL26 has extended the goalpost to 6/11/25. No way. Can't work. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can roll with that. There's a point where it begins to resemble the gambler's fallacy, which is the idea that I keep losing, keep losing, keep losing. The next one's going to win. The more losses in a row, the more likely there's going to be a win the next time. And it just seems like probability. You flip a coin, heads, 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 heads. Okay, let's bet money. Is the next one going to be heads? And most people will say, well, it's got to be tails because probability. And they assume there's some kind of balancing. And it will, with a million flips, give you 50-50. But there may be periods of time where you get a sequence or several where it seems to be clumpy, as Carl Sagan called it. Probability is clumpy. E4 Rockin says, why are these predictions always grim and based in fear? Good question. Nobody ever predicts anything great. Well, they kind of do, actually. Well, it's a mix. So the QAnon movement is like, hey, this is a prospiracy. You're a conspiracy theorist. You look at the negative things, but the prospiracy is that we win in the end. So it sounds like a good thing. Great awakening, med beds, life extension, bad guys all get it, good guys win. So it sounds like a very great prediction, but the problem is before you get there, you have to kill all the enemies. So after the bloodbath, after the war, after the destruction, it's just more revolutionary stuff. Burn down, build back better, but coming from the other side. Anufel says day 6, month 6, year 6. No, 2024 is not a 6. It's an 8. You can't drop the 2 at the front just because it's convenient. Jake the A-hole says, Ryan Garcia doesn't give an F what the elites do to him. He's going to speak the truth, but he won't give any names or details. Yeah, I mean, that's the sickest thing in the world. He witnessed a mass grape, a mass satanic ritual in the woods, and he was only 2 years old. And he's not going to point fingers. All right, let's continue catching up on comments. I'm done with predictions. The predictions that the world will end. Here, I'll have one prediction, actually. I predict that there will always be predictions that the world's about to end. The first time I heard somebody tell me we were in the end times, I thought I was talking to somebody with some kind of a problem. You know, he's like, we're in the end times. I was like, does he really believe this? Because you couldn't have any real basis for believing that the world's about to end. But he did. He said, we are in the end times, the Lord's about to come back, the sky's going to fall, etc. And I just kind of ignored it as, okay, it's a symptom of whatever fanaticism he's fallen into. But it's very dark to say, yeah, the world's all going to die soon, and I'm going to see it. I knew some Jehovah's Witnesses who tried to recruit me once, and I heard about this. But then you listen to mainstream science, and they say, if you're not aware that the world's about to end, you're not paying attention to the science. If you only knew what the climate scientists knew. So there's no opt out of the end times. Whether you're an atheistic believer in scientism or a true believer in some fanatical faith where the world's going to end, the world's going to end. Or you have some kind of political philosophy that suggests that there has to be an end brought about to win. But it's always about the end. And to bring back to what I was saying before, there is no end. The script has an end always in sight so you don't look too far. Just like they constrain your sense of geography with the false model, they constrain your sense of the future. The future's only, you can only see so far in the fog. Dinah South says, we've been in the end times since the Old Covenant ended in 70 AD. I would say this. If you live past 12/21/2020, congratulations, you survived the end of the world. And you're in the new one with us. There's not going to be a resolution that we're all going to experience together where you get all the answers and the bad guys get it and the good guys win. It doesn't work that way. You're not the good guys if you're on the world stage. If you're a truther and you're like, let me fight the deep state, guess what? You're not the good guys. You are a propaganda mule. You're a spreader, a super spreader of fear-based mind viruses. You are the enemy. I kind of made this point the other day, but that if you take into account the effects of psychosomatics and the placebo effect, the truthers are largely responsible, if you look at it from that perspective, for a lot of the negativity that they complain about. It's atrocity propaganda. You shouldn't spread it. You're doing the work of Big Brother. It's like the mainstreamers get it from the screen, the alt media get it from each other, but they're all getting it. There's so much more to talk about. Let me post this image. A chemtrail truther posted this and he said, sadly, thick idiots think this has always happened. Imagine being this stupid. And he has an image of contrails above his head, and I said there, beautiful. I love those. So we're both looking at the same objective phenomenon. Objective reality exists. There's a white line in the sky. He says, you must be a thick idiot to not have a problem with this. And I'm saying that's beautiful. He thinks it's ugly and toxic and it's killing him. I think it's an indicator of human progress because we fly now. Two different views, same phenomenon. Is it ugly or is it beautiful? Is it a sign of progress or is it a sign of doom? It depends on whether you're brainwashed or not, if you're programmed or not. That's a programmed fear. Truthers feel like they're on the moral high ground because they're teaching people to be afraid of the sky. Fear the clouds. The wokers think that they have the moral high ground because they're teaching you the same thing. Fear what your consumption is doing to Gaia and the eventual backlash. And I'm here saying, unplug from the fear. Kevin Mooring says we should be dead from chemtrails by now. Oh yeah, chemtrail lung. We should all have it. Okay, everything is going along as expected. The endless, what I call World War Infinite. Don't worry about World War III or the next Civil War. It is World War Infinite. It never ends, which is good and bad. It's good if you know what it is and you can step outside of it. It's bad if you're riding that roller coaster. Intersection says, what do we believe? Do we believe in evolution and bingo, or do we believe this was created with purpose? I think the evolution narrative is a secular creation myth that's designed to disconnect us from any kind of soul and the idea of a divine origin of man. And by divine, I mean this soul-matter dichotomy. Are we defined by our bodies? Is our consciousness a side effect, a byproduct of our brain? And I would say no. That's contradicted by synchronicity, intuition, by precognition, telepathy, by anything that falls outside of their ability to explain. You can find many examples of where consciousness doesn't seem to be solely constrained to the body. Awareness isn't solely a product of the body, but our body is merely the densest level of our soul's expression. And the evolution would suggest that no, we're just domesticated apes with big egos who can't confront the meaninglessness of it all, so we invent stuff. And I'm taking the opposite. I think the universe is intrinsically meaningful. Life has a purpose. It's made of information and purpose and our perception of it. The big lie is that it's meaningless and that we are just mud, risen up, when in fact we're descended down into the mud. So I don't believe it in the sense they describe it. I think it's kind of this idea that man is between ape and alien, and we have to use, science and modern salvation is going to lead us to this transcendent state, but that they kind of despiritualized us and replaced it with an alternative version of spirituality, this singularity notion. But I do think they've given us a very dead universe, static. And that's why I say I don't believe the universe exists until we experience it. I don't think it's a bunch of objects and balls floating around in this big abyss, and we're just these, again, over evolved or egotistical apes. And that eventually we're going to die. It's going to be hit by a planet killer asteroid, no more Earth, and the universe folds up on itself, and nothing is left. I don't think that's how it ends. And I don't think it exists in that sense. I do not like I'm worse than a flat earther, to be honest. I'm an earth denier. Prove to me that we're on an object. Okay, well, this has been fun as usual. I appreciate all the callers as always. Even the callers that I had to block, they all have their points to make, and we're happy to hear them. This is Death to the Ball. We'll be live again tomorrow, likely same time.